This is Audible.
Shipping Container Homes. All you need to know. The Complete Guide to Real Estate with Strategies and Useful Tips. Written by Grover Nicholls. Narrated by Chris Lynch. Introduction. There are three main purposes that shipping containers serve to satisfy. They are meant to withstand heavy loads of shipment, product storage, and excessive handling without much of a hassle. It is with these reasons in mind that these cargo containers are built to last, to be as strong and durable as possible so as not to succumb to wear and tear early in their life. There are different types of shipping containers, and these come in varying sizes as well. Most common are the steel boxes that can be used over and over again. And then there are those that are meant for short-term reliability, the corrugated boxes. The former is utilized for what is known as intermodal shipping. It basically means that the container has been designed to be moved or transported from one location to another without having to be unloaded, not to mention repacked. The most common type of container used for shipping container homes are the intermodal freight shipping containers. Aside from domestic transport, other locational transport needs for various products, including those done from country to country, are satisfied by intermodal freight shipping containers. There are millions of these cargo units around the world, some of which are in active transit, others stored in warehouses, and others reused in various ways. When it comes to long-distance freight done on a global scale, these shipping containers play very important roles. Although these are extremely dependable, sending them back to their point of origin can be costly. It is cheaper to simply source new ones should the need for such a container arise. That is why most of these intermodal containers are discarded to save costs on the return trip. The improvement of intercontinental trade can be attributed to the invention of these cargo containers. Not only have they been able to help reduce transport costs, but they also helped prevent losses from product damage. When it comes to the fabrication of these intermodal shipping containers, they are known for being highly durable, with the most popular variety being those made out of heavy-duty steel. There is always the question of why these boxes are so strong, and what makes them such, and the answer is simple. These cargo units are extremely strong because of the metal composite that they've been fabricated from. Because they are designed to withstand the elements, not to mention heavy loads, and because they are meant to be used and reused over time, a special kind of material, corten, is used. Corten is a type of steel component often referred to as weathering steel. This material, when exposed to the elements, allows light rust to form on the surface. To most, this might not seem to be the best thing, but the light rust actually acts as a secondary barrier or armor which strengthens the steel over time. The rust does not progress to the degree which eats at the metal. In this case, it is more of an ally to the steel rather than an enemy. Aside from shipping containers, this material is also used to reinforce bridges, towers, chimneys, sculptures, and rail cars, to name a few. Every time a shipping container is made, manufacturers line the corten walls with marine-grade paint, which acts as a sealant and protective coating. Over time, the paint will degrade due to wear and tear. It is during this time that the material starts promulgating the formation of light rust, which replaces the paint as the structure's external protection. Intermodal shipping containers are some of the most widely used cargo units around the world. These are made out of a steel composite and come in various types, not to mention sizes. A huge chunk of the total number of available shipping containers around the globe are referred to as dry freight, which basically means that they are general-purpose containers used to transport different dry materials or products across continents. These durable steel boxes come with double-ended doors, which can be closed and sealed with ease. The standard lengths are either 20 or 40 feet, with a height ranging from 8.5 to 9.5 feet. If necessary, an extender can be added to the top wall, offering an additional foot of height per container. An intermodal shipping container is one of the larger shipping boxes readily available today and is designed to cater to intermodal transport. It means that these boxes can be shipped via different modes of transportation, including land, air, and sea. Aside from this, The containers can be shipped without having to unload or reload cargo until they reach their final destination. Securing the boxes is easy, as there are multiple locking systems in each one, with the final keys only available to the shipper or receiver. Similar to how pallets and cardboard boxes function, these kinds of shipping containers are ideal for bundling cargo into an easy-to-handle package. The containers can easily be moved using lifters or cranes. They can neatly be placed side by side, and they can also be stacked atop one another. Aside from easy transport, this also allows for organized storage. All of these capabilities, together with the individual identifying marks and details per container unit, can attribute to several key construction features applied to these shipping containers. Millions of these intermodal cargo units can be found around the world, actively being used in the constant importation and exportation of goods and materials. Years after their inception, they have become the primary choice for carrying cargo, as they allow for more effective and efficient transport. For a 20-footer, it weighs an average of 2,200 kilograms empty and can handle a content load of 28,200 kilograms for a final net allowable load of 30,400 kilograms. The 40-footer can handle the same net weight, but weighs more when empty, around 3,800 kilograms, which means the maximum internal load it can handle is about 26,600 kilograms. In the case of stacking, without additional support pillars, standard 40-footers can be stacked one on top of the other. Without modifications, it is not safe to stack containers of differing size on top of one another. For 20-footers, they can only hold a second-story 40-footer if there are two 20-footers side by side supporting the load. It is always best to consult a structural engineer when it comes to something like this to ensure that the structure is balanced and safe for whatever purpose it intends to serve. It was during the 1940s when the use of these steel shipping containers became widespread, thanks in part to the United States military and commercial shipping businesses that actually manufactured similar units in-house. It was the U.S. Army that developed the idea to put corrugations on the steel walls to increase durability, without having to increase the amount of steel needed for the structure. It was also the first type of container to have double-end doors and improved on the rolling structure first applied to the Lodkiston unit. This particular shipping container unit was shared with other countries, like Korea for example, where it was successfully used for commercial purposes. The U.S. Army's container prototype was later improved upon, with the new version having the well-known stacking feature. As the years progressed, engineers continued their work to improve the design and function of the intermodal shipping container. They were made to last longer and be more reliable in the safe transportation of various products across different channels. When the 1970s arrived, a specific set of standards applicable on a global scale was established for these containers, allowing for consistent transportation, loading, and unloading of goods across different ports. By having one set of standards for everybody, transport became more efficient, saving everyone lots of time and money. These days, intermodal shipping containers continue to be used around the world, but they carry an additional purpose, and that is to stand as structural blocks for residences and other livable shelters. Container home features. The charm of shipping container homes lies in the customized features. Working with the limited square footage means most of the common home features will have to be modified to suit the container home. Dimensions will be reduced, and shapes will be modified to embrace the structure of the container home itself and/or the surroundings. Here are some features that are already proven viable for shipping container homes. 1. Terrace or pergola, made from a spare container with the left and right walls stripped off. 2. External connecting deck, a separate assembly of your choice, wood, brick, stone, concrete, etc. 3. Window box, attached to the steel framing of the window. 4. Glass balustrade, an alternative for terraces. The glass can be held in place by mounting spigots and supported by the terrace's steel pillars. 5. Skylight. This can range from a 2 by 2 foot glass roof in a single container home, or the entire length of the third container with both walls stripped off and then situated in between two containers that form the extended sides of the house. Skylights can help reduce electricity costs in the long run because they let in natural light and heat. 6. Sliding glass doors. Additional functions. Reinforces wall and roof support with steel framing, plus entry point for natural light. 7. Floor-to-ceiling shelving systems. Columns of shelves can double as roof support and room division, especially when placed at the center of the container. 8. High windows. Doesn't only illuminate the room, but also promotes proper ventilation. 9. Container pool. This is an extravagant feature that's interesting to say the least. A spare container, with its roof removed, can be converted into a traditional pool. The ground is excavated and the container is lowered in place. Tiles are usually laid along the edges of the container pool. Or an elevated pool, the container pool sits on the ground, just like the container house. There will be a ladder and a sitting ledge at the edge of the container. Utilities. In addition to the structural features, consider adding features that will help minimize cost for utilities. Several examples above, which allow natural light into the house, also fall into the utilities territory. The following are features that owners of converted container homes should consider having. Having an unconventional home means that repairs may also be unconventional. The methods of assembly for electric lines, water pipes, septic system, and heating, for example, are likely to be different from other familiar systems in traditional houses. Hence, there will be greater payoff if you invest in utility features as early as construction. 1. Water tank. Rainwater collected from the roof can be converted for drinking or simply for washing. 2. Solar panels. They are usually laid on the roof, but may also be assembled on the ground and facing whichever direction can maximize sunlight exposure. Electricity will be stored in batteries. The energy produced is usually enough to power small, basic home appliances. 3. Air conditioning. Consider the chances of mounting air conditioning units when evaluating the integrity of the walls. 4. Wood burner. This saves electricity, but access to firewood will be required. The important points to consider will be the exhaust system and compliance to fire safety codes. 5. Grills. Installing grills outside windows and doors promotes ventilation, natural lighting, and home security. 6. Interior insulation. Padding the walls with insulation from the inside without touching the corrugated walls will preserve structural integrity in addition to regulating interior temperature. 7. Satellite dish or antenna mount. This is a necessity if the house is in a remote location. This is for cable, telephone, and/or internet lines. 8. Single sink. Whether for a bathroom or the kitchen, a single sink will be space efficient. 9. Shower. For container homes with limited floor space, go for a shower stall instead of a tub. 10. Loft. A cozy feature for single container homes, a loft is best installed for a 45-foot-high cube container because 9.5 feet of roof height will leave more room for the loft, which can serve as the sleeping area, and the space beneath it, which can be utilized for storage or a low-ceiling living area. The latter is especially possible if the foundation is a crawl space. This means the floor area can be lowered to the ground. 11. Cooling roof coating. A must for container houses in tropical climates. The low roof will make the entire house prone to humidity and heat. Cool roof coating can at least help deflect UV rays and heat. The great thing about these features is that if they do not make it to the first construction plans because of budget constraints, let's say, they can still be installed at a later date. Benefits of owning a shipping container home. In this day and age, it is quite hard to earn a decent living that will allow you to have the home of your dreams, no matter how much you try to adjust your dreams to your budget. Finding a cost-effective way to live your life is very important, and shipping container homes give you the opportunity to have a sustainable way of life while also having the life you want to have. When shipping container homes' costs are compared to other residential options in the market, they become obviously cheap and very much desirable. And this is one instance where cheap does not mean ugly or uncomfortable. This is possibly the biggest advantage of owning a shipping container home for people who are simply looking to live a decent and comfortable life. Because of the prefabricated nature of shipping container homes, you could get double the square space of livable space for at least half the price offered by more conventional homes. In time, the cost of living will exceed any rent savings. All of this while owning your own property, which is pretty neat in this day and age. Shipping container homes offer excellent value for money opportunities, the likes of which you will be hard-pressed to find in the conventional residential market. Besides the obvious economic advantages of owning these types of homes, a shipping container home has been found to be one of the most environmentally friendly buildings available today. Considering how expensive green living can be, this is a great piece of news to anyone wanting to help the environment but cannot afford to do so easily. Shipping container homes are so versatile that they allow nearly any eco-friendly installation, from solar panels and conserving LED lights to rainwater harvesting systems. A shipping container home is a perfect choice, even for people who are planning to live off the grid. Not only are the homes themselves quite ecologically friendly, but if you choose to buy a used shipping container, you would be helping reduce the number of containers simply sitting around and polluting. On top of that, since you are essentially using a recycled, prefabricated structure, you will be reducing the demand for building materials, which, if more people catch on, will eliminate the need to make more building material. Something else, many shipping containers are melted, which pollutes quite a lot, and is simply not an energy-efficient way to recycle the steel from the containers. People say that time is money, and this adage is quite true for building. Using a shipping container as the base for your home will greatly reduce the amount of time needed to build your home because the structure already exists. All you really need is your imagination to turn that basic structure into something extraordinary. Cutting building time not only allows people to start enjoying their homes sooner, but it also significantly lowers the amount of money needed to build the house. A regular home may take the better part of a year to build, while building a shipping container home can take as little as 3 weeks. Some shipping container homes can be built for less than $30,000, not including the cost of the land. Another advantage that is often overlooked when considering to build your shipping container home is the fact that you can build the home off-site and simply install it where you want it. This means that you do not necessarily need to insure the building space. With this, we mean that you would not need to make sure that there is enough wiggle room in your land to actually build something. You can have your home constructed off-site and then transported to your land and installed as you would install your refrigerator. Perhaps a little more complicated than that, but no less amazing. Shipping container homes are also incredibly safe compared to other modular-style houses. They can stand up to anything that Mother Nature throws at them. After all, they were designed to last for years at sea. The fact that they are made from corrugated steel lends them their structural integrity, as well as allowing them to withstand constant exposure to the elements. Shipping container homes have been shown to be able to withstand earthquakes, as well as heavy flooding due to hurricanes. This is quite impressive for a home made out of recycled materials. A single unit is enough to provide ample space for a grown person to inhabit comfortably, and their stackable nature makes easy-to-build multi-level facilities that can be a home to an entire family. Risks involved with a shipping container home. Despite the many advantages of shipping container homes, there are a few disadvantages and risks involved with a shipping container home, many of which will be addressed in this section. Others will be mentioned only in passing, and their solutions will be given in the following chapters. It is vital that you understand the possible risks involved before you venture into the world of shipping container homes. Many of them can easily be overcome, but you should still make a good and informed decision. When the shipping container home fad started gaining popularity, there were many people concerned about how safe the homes actually were. Most of these concerns are not so much structural as they are about the things that shipping containers carried while they were still in use, as well as methods by which the containers were cleansed. These are all valid concerns and have been addressed by many people over the years. The first concern is that the floors might be toxic. Since shipping containers travel all around the world, they are treated with toxic chemicals to keep vermin and bugs away from them. There are very strict regulations about these chemicals, especially since America does not permit the access of alien species into their ecosystem, which means that the people on the shipping container business need to make sure that no foreign species can survive inside their containers. Every container needs to be approved for American standards, since separating them would be very inconvenient and time-consuming. Shipping container floors are made out of laminated timber or plywood. These floors are treated with organochlorine insecticides. Some studies have shown that the wood is very good at absorbing and in extreme cases, even transferring the pesticides. This is, without a doubt, a very big concern, since the plan is to turn the shipping container into a living space, which means that toxic fumes are a no-no. While this is definitely a valid concern, there are many ways in which it can be addressed. For one, you can consider buying a new shipping container and specify that you do not want the plywood floors to be treated with pesticides. Another option is for you to ask that they use an alternative form of flooring, namely bamboo or steel, though this might add to the overall cost. If you want to keep it cheap and buy a used shipping container, then you must check the plywood floors for pesticides. You may do this by checking the container's safe convention plate that is attached to the container's front door. On that plate, you will find a section called Timber Component Treatment, which consists of 3 parts: immunity, treatment chemicals, and treatment date. In the second section, you will be able to establish which chemicals were used to treat the floors. With that information, you can go to the World Health Organization's classification of pesticides to see just how harsh and harmful the chemicals are. The only problem with this approach is that if the floor was damaged and replaced, the replacement chemicals will not be shown on this plate, and the plate will not tell you if any potential dangerous chemicals were spilt inside the container. In the end, there is the question of whether you should replace the plywood floor. The decision is completely yours, though it is very much recommended that you do replace the flooring, as it is safer and also more aesthetically pleasing. If you choose to remove the flooring, then you will find that it is less complicated than it seems. It takes a while, but you can easily do it yourself, provided you have a still saw and a pry bar. To remove the flooring, you will need to cut the first floorboard you want with a saw, then pull up that one board with a pry bar where all the nails are fixed to the bearers. Then you can work your way along lifting every other floorboard nearby. You can use the pry bar to lever the panels up and take them out. Then you can fit in any flooring you like. Other than the health advantages of taking out the flooring, there is also the fact that removing the plywood will allow you to insulate underneath the container, which is going to be useful if you live in a cold area. If the flooring is not removed, then you would have to hire a crane to lift the container so that you can use a spray foam insulator on the outside. If you choose not to remove the flooring, there are still things you can do to keep it from being toxic. The concern over the present pesticides is that they might produce toxic fumes when the temperature is increased. Even if the effectiveness of the pesticides is reduced over time, the risk is still there and it needs addressing. The most popular choice for people who have decided to keep the plywood flooring is to use epoxy to the flooring, which will seal the plywood and limit the vapors produced by the pesticides. If you choose to go down this route, then there are 2 things to take into account. The first is that you use only solvent-free epoxy that is recommended for its use on wood. The second one is that you thoroughly clean the plywood with isopropyl alcohol. But remember that you need to keep the room really well ventilated because the fumes of both the epoxy and the isopropyl alcohol are tremendously strong. If you refuse to add more chemicals to the plywood, then you can simply use a non-breathable flooring underlayment. This can be a polyethylene plastic that is placed directly on top of the plywood floor and then covered with your flooring of choice. This can range from more wood to concrete and even tiles. The non-breathable underlayment will stop the pesticide fumes from oozing out of the wood out and into your lungs. Footings or base. The footings, or slab, are the foundations of what your home will be sitting on. Hence, you need to ensure that it is 100% stable. To do so, you must have the plans in hand that have been written by an engineer, because they consider the soil's grade and what type of foundation is required for your block of land and where you are building the home. Sometimes, the engineer will allow two types of foundations, depending on your grade of soil and how much weight your home will bear. If it's a 3-story shipping container home, you will need bigger and stronger footings. A major risk involved with this is that you don't listen to the engineer and you get the cheapest option of foundation, and you find that your shipment container home is now on a drastic lean and you have to get all the water, electrical, and layers of your home disassembled and reassembled years down the track. I know this sounds unrealistic and funny, but there are some dodgy people in every trade, and house inspectors, if paid enough money, will look past something in the short term, but will cause you havoc later down the track. Structure. You need to ensure when building your shipping container home that you either know what you are doing with the structure when modifying it, or you have a professional carpenter do it. The structure of a shipping container is now your home, so ensure that you have the plans drawn up, and you are not just winging it when you are cutting into it and changing the weight dynamics of the frame. You must have an engineer do all of the planning and your carpenter following the engineering plans if you are doing this. Because if you just create your own home without having plans drawn up with shipping container homes, it can be deemed as an unstable structure when the time comes of selling. Or worse, when you are living in it, it somehow has a fault that you didn't account for, and part collapses and crushes you or a loved one. Electricity. This can be a funny, yet very dangerous topic as we are building a box made of metal, the best conductor of electricity. Imagine this: a home that has a wire exposed and now be touching the metal, not allowing the person to leave their home. Because the metal door handle and interior walls are now live with electricity, it would be the funniest story to tell or see because they literally cannot touch metal or they will get zapped. This is not a good scenario and can be extremely dangerous if the electric pulse hits that person at full capacity. So therefore, we need to ensure that all the electric works are done correctly and signed off by an electrician to say that your home is now safe. Or you ensure that you know what you're doing and make sure the circuit breaker works. Tiny house movement and minimalism. Tiny house movement. The tiny house movement is a growing trend, both in the United States and also throughout the world. More and more people are moving to smaller, sustainable, and more affordable living options, popularly referred to as tiny houses. These tiny houses are typically less than 300 square feet. Some are made on trailers and are totally portable, allowing the owner to move whenever they like. The main drivers for this move to smaller housing are the extremely high costs of building or buying a traditional house, a rebellion of sorts against materialism, and a push for a minimalistic lifestyle. People living this tiny house lifestyle, for the most part, claim to be happier owning less possessions and having more money left over for experiences rather than spending it on material items. Many people are choosing to create their tiny houses out of shipping containers. Due to their low cost, sustainability, and durability, shipping container homes are the ideal way to enter the tiny house movement. What is minimalism? Minimalism is quite simply a lifestyle choice to possess less material items. A simple definition is to live only with things that you really need. While some minimalists also have a few material possessions that aren't absolutely vital, the idea is to live with less. Most people have thousands of dollars of material possessions, and they never use or even look at. We tend to accumulate these things over time, and they end up being nothing more than a burden, both physically and financially. The unnecessary possessions can often stop people from living the life they desire, be that to travel, or to simply have the freedom to spend money on experiences rather than things. The tiny house movement is driven primarily by the minimalist lifestyle. People are starting to want more experiences whilst having less stuff. A tiny house saves people money, forces them to get rid of useless things that they don't need, and oftentimes allows them to travel if their home is portable. How to embrace a minimalist lifestyle. From where you are now, it might seem like a massive and almost impossible step to take to embrace this style of living. We can become overly attached to our possessions, even the ones we never use or look at. Things often have sentimental value also, making them that much harder to part with. A great first step for testing this lifestyle is to create a stock list of sorts. Walk around your house and compile a list of all the things that you have. List all of the appliances, gadgets, furniture, books, movies, souvenirs, old presents, things hidden away in your garage, and everything else that you can find. Next, go through your list and make a note of all the items that you could live without and/or rarely use. You might be surprised at how much stuff you've accumulated that doesn't really add anything to your life. You'd also be surprised at how much money you could make by listing a lot of these things on eBay, greatly helping to fund your shipping container home build. If you're ready to dive into the tiny house lifestyle, then it's time to get rid of these things. If you are struggling to get rid of them, but can't fit them into your new home, paying for storage somewhere is a great idea. Some things have sentimental value, and others can simply be difficult to part with after a long time of owning them. Put these things into storage and give them to a friend or relative to look after. After a while without them, you might come to the realization that you don't need these things after all, and will be ready to part ways with them altogether. Obviously, the minimalist and tiny house lifestyle isn't for everyone, and that's totally okay. There are plenty of massive shipping container homes out there, complete with amazing designs and features, such as swimming pools. The choice is all yours. Different types of containers and how to use them. There are different types of containers. The most common one we know of is the 40-foot-high cube steel dry cargo container. These are the ones you often see on the back of big rigs rumbling down the highway. These containers are used mainly for transporting dry goods and are the most common type of shipping container, which is why most people use them for building houses. But, as you already know by now, there are different types of containers, and you can actually use these other types to build your home and either 1, cut down on the expenses incurred, or 2, come up with an entirely new and unique home that not everyone has thought of. Usually, for innovation, it is better to let people come up with their own ideas on how to further improve a product to fit their own taste and needs. But, in the spirit of helping the community, let's spark off some ideas and get a creative flame going. Using containers with different sizes together. The usual route to go when building a container house is to settle on a size and start with that. Further planning often involves getting the same size of container and successfully pairing or mating it. Through further engineering, these containers often become part of one another, interconnected in a way because of the specific modifications done to it, so it would fit the other. The usual addition done to a single container setup is to add another one for the purposes of increasing the living area space, or to create a separate room for sleeping and others. These additions are usually 1. Placed side by side with the original container, and then holes are cut into the adjoining wall, or 2. The additional container is placed on top of the existing one, and then stairs are added to the equation. These stairs can either be interior or exterior stairs. It depends on what the owner fancies. Going back to the topic at hand, a basic container home is divided into several distinct areas that you'd normally find in a conventional home. You have your kitchen, your bedrooms, your living space, your toilets and baths, and other places. Now here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. The main idea to creating a container home is to take advantage of the whole slew of design possibilities associated with it. Some people seem to have forgotten the excitement attached to creating a truly innovative home through these metal boxes. One of the easiest things to do is mixing up container sizes to create 1. A clear delineation without too much cutting, 2. To offset the otherwise sterile appearance of a container home, and last but not least, 3. To to stand out from the ironic turn of events that have made container homes seem boring. It seems like everyone who has a container home has created one to look exactly just like the next person, and that goes against the main idea of being unique, which was one of the main driving reasons why people chose to live in container homes in the first place. Okay, let's run down different sizes. Current container sizes range from 8 feet to 45 feet in length, with an average width of 7 feet and 8 inches. The entire range of lengths, with height and width measurements, is listed below. Type: 8 foot. Length: 8 foot. Height: 7 foot 5 inches. Width: 7 foot 1 inch. Type: 10 foot. Length: 10 feet. Height: 8 feet 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. Type: 10 foot high cube. Length: 10 feet. Height: 9 feet 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. Type: 20 foot. Length: 20 feet. Height: 8 feet 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. Type: 20 foot high cube. Length: 20 feet. Height: 9 feet 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. Type: 30 foot. Length: 30 feet. Height: 8 foot 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. Type: 30 foot high cube. Length: 30 feet. Height: 9 feet 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. Type: 40 foot. Length: 40 feet. Height: 8 feet 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. Type: 40 foot high cube. Length: 40 feet. Height: 9 feet 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. Type: 45 foot. Length: 45 feet. Height: 8 feet 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. Type: 45 foot high cube. Length: 45 feet. Height: 9 feet 6 inches. Width: 8 feet. So with the exception of the 8-footer, all widths are uniform. Height varies depending on the type of container you have, which is either a standard container or a high cube container. So now, what are these numbers good for? This shows that you can easily match up a container to another one, as long as they match in dimensions other than length. In theory, a 10-foot high cube can be attached to a 45 high cube to extend the length of the entire structure without any issues. This will give you a container with a total length of 55 feet. Think about the design capabilities you can get out of just connecting two containers with different lengths. You would essentially double your interior real estate without having to purchase the same type of a container, which could seriously impact your budget. You can also use different sizes to serve different purposes. For example, you can build your home out of 1 or 2 40-footers, and then for a storage area, you get a 10-footer. This small container can be 1. Attached, 2. Placed on top of the other 2, or 3. Totally disconnected from the main structure. You now have a home with a structure dedicated for storage purposes. And last, here's another idea that you might want to consider: using an 8-footer for your toilet and bath. Containers are metal, and too much exposure to moisture can lead to rust and structural damage. You'd think that's a normal thing to expect, and repairs can be done in the future. But that would mean having to isolate a portion of your house or totally vacate in order for the repairs to take place. And while that's happening, you'd have to rely on an outhouse to do your business in. Now, what if you have a separate container dedicated to just being an outhouse without clashing with the theme? The size of an 8-footer is ideal for making an outhouse, since it is smaller than a typical container and can provide enough space for the essential items or fixtures you'd find in a normal toilet or bath. Totally separating your toilet and bath from the rest of the house can also minimize the possibility of accumulated moisture within the house, which could lead to structural damage. Now, if your toilet and bath is damaged, you won't have to turn your house upside down just to fix it. You can get many different benefits when you use different sizes of containers to create your own home. You can place them side by side, on top of each other, totally separate them, connect them at an angle. There are so many possibilities you can experiment with, and each one will give you a totally new twist on things and make you stand out from the rest. This will make your home a truly unique container home. The design possibilities for using containers with different sizes are so numerous that we might run out of space listing each and every one down. Using different types of containers with each other. Just as there are different sizes associated with containers, so too are there different types. Once again, we have the normal 20 and 40-footer high cubes, but there are also containers out there that we fail to see as containers, basically because we have a limited understanding or view of what containers really are. We've already discussed the different lengths associated with containers. Now let's discuss the different types and what we can do with them in terms of creating a home or enhancing your current home. Steel dry containers. These are the most common shipping containers out there, and the type with the most variety in terms of size and dimension. These are also the main types of containers used for creating container houses. Steel dry containers come in all sizes, from the 8-foot variety to the massive 45-footers transporting really huge cargo. Except for the 8-footer, all steel dry containers have high cube variant. At first glance, this type of container is already a complete package, as it is structurally sound and can be manipulated in a variety of ways to allow for opening cuts into them from the sides, the tops, or the bottom. These types of containers are used for hauling dry goods and are well insulated from the get-go to protect the products they are transporting inside from too much heat or cold. Basic design. For all intents and purposes, this is a large metal box. If you really want to get technical about it, it's a large, metallic, rectangular box. The corners are where it is strongest, and it can be supported by any type of foundation you can come up with. Main uses. Since these containers are the staples of creating a container home, they are usually used to create the entire home. Depending on the size, they can be sectioned off, and partitions can be made to properly delineate one space from the next. The size of the container can be a hindrance in terms of design, but adding 1 or 2 to the current mix should essentially double or triple the amount of livable space in it. These containers are also the cheapest because they are very abundant, and there is a current overstocking in most shipyards and cargo yards all over the nation. Refrigerated containers. Some types of cargo have to maintain a specific temperature. These are usually medicines or perishable goods that cannot stand the heat. This is the reason why there are refrigerated containers available. A refrigerated container, or reefer, has a refrigeration unit attached to it and can, for all intents and purposes, drop the internal temperature down to below 0. Now, why would you even consider building a home that you could literally freeze to death in? Basic design. A reefer is basically the same as a steel dry cargo container, except for the additional refrigeration unit attached to it. Inside, a reefer is better insulated to keep the cold in and to prevent heat from going inside. It comes in 2 sizes, 20 feet and 40 feet only, with only the 40-footer supporting a high cube variant. The only setback with using a reefer for a home is you can't put anything on top of it, and cutting out parts of it can seriously affect its cooling capabilities. It can also be a bit noisy if the refrigerator is in operation, and powering it can be resource intensive. With that said, a reefer is still a type of container you can consider using for your container home. Main uses. People living in tropical climates who desire owning a container house can use a reefer as an alternative to the standard steel dry containers that most people use. As a home, it should be passable as the size is basically the same, if not even larger, than steel dry cargo containers. It can get pretty cold quickly though. You can also use the reefer side by side with steel dry cargo containers and let it act as the cooling unit for your standard containers. With proper venting, the cold generated by the reefer can be distributed equally to all parts of the container structure, giving it a more even, cool temperature inside. Or, a better approach would be to use the reefer as a storage area where you can keep food items, medicines, and other temperature-sensitive items. Reefers can be connected to the main container home structure, or can also be separated from the others, and it will still do what it was purposefully made for. Open top container. Once again, our basic idea of what a container is will be challenged as we head off into the direction of more diverse forms of containers. One of these types of containers is the open top container variant. The open type container is often used to transport materials like rocks, gravel, or bulky food items. These would then be secured from the elements by placing a tarpaulin on top, lashed to the eyelets spread all over the top rim of the open top container. Basic design. Open top containers are basically containers without the metal top attached. They are reinforced to avoid the tops from collapsing inwards, so even though it doesn't have the top attached, it is still quite strong. The bracings extend from each corner and attaches to the adjacent corner, creating a tight rectangular frame, which is the main reason why open-top containers are very strong. Open tops come in 20-foot and 40-foot lengths, with the 40-footer sporting a high cube variant. Main uses. Why would you use a container without a roof? Why would you live in a house without a roof? One of the specific reasons why you should get an open-type container to build as your container home is because it is cheaper and you can attach a roof on it. If you've seen the current trend of container homes all over the nation, more and more people opt to place an additional roof on top of their structure. Why? Because a container is a steel structure. Continuous exposure to heat or cold will make the building adjust to the temperature. If your home is not properly insulated, it can get very hot. A roof is one way of addressing that concern. A vaulted ceiling is going even further to help the situation. So if you have an open-top container, you have the option of shaping your ceiling as you please. It can maintain the same type of sterile, squared-off ceiling, or you can vault it for aesthetic and operational purposes. You can also use the open top as a connection room to your other container or containers, and take advantage of the ventilation provided by the open top to the rest of the structure. The open top can be designed to be part of the interior or as an external unit with ventilation access points to the rest of the structure. Another more radical idea is bracing the entire top of the open top and then letting it lie on its side. This gives you a container with an entire side open for which you can furnish with glass and others for a more modern look. The doors will have to be fixed, as they will now open in a horizontal manner instead of vertically as they are supposed to. The possibilities you have with an open top are virtually limitless, which is why it is a good alternative to the steel dry cargo containers for container home building. Flat rack. This is going to make aspiring container home owners or designers scratch their heads. How can you make a container home if the container you are getting barely resembles a container? Basic design. A flat rack container either has no sidewalls or only has walls for the front and back. Some even go as far as only having freestanding posts. Some flat racks also have collapsible ends, so it can, in essence, just lay as flat as possible. Some don't even have any ends or posts at all. There are many forms of flat racks. You have these to choose from. 20-foot flat rack with freestanding posts. 40-foot flat rack with freestanding posts. 20-foot flat rack with collapsible end. 40-foot with collapsible end. 20-foot flat rack with collapsible ends. 40-foot flat rack with collapsible ends. 40-foot flat rack high cube. Now, why would someone come up with a container that doesn't look like a container at all? The reason why flat racks were made was to accommodate large equipment that cannot conform to the size and shape of a conventional steel dry cargo container. For example, a bulldozer may have parts sticking out that would make it virtually impossible to make it fit inside a standard dry cargo container. It would ruin the container, and it would also ruin the equipment. The solution? Take out the walls. And that's how flat racks came into existence and popularity. Main uses. How are you going to live in a house that has no walls? This is the main question container homeowners ask when they are presented with the idea of turning a flat rack into a container home. Some would say it's a bad idea and not worth mulling over. But using a flat rack in any of its variants is actually a great idea for building your home. So what's the answer to that? Why build the walls yourself, of course? Now that you don't have any walls to contend with, you are free to design it any way you want to, without any restrictions based on build and design. You now have structural integrity thanks to the basic construction of the flat rack, and all you have to do is add walls to it. You can use whatever materials you fancy. A great example would be to use wood for the sidewalls. It could turn out to be a rather unique log cabin type home, as the corners would end up as metallic posts. You can also use this type of container as a way to make two adjoining containers seem or feel bigger. By placing this in the middle of two existing containers in a unified structure, you are creating a large room that is free of any constraints. You can also use it as an elevated area connected to your main house. The 4 freestanding posts can easily be trussed up and designed with a simple roof to further modify it. Finally, just screen it off, and you have a functional porch without having to construct any other structures in your immediate area. Or, if you want to use the flat rack for any other purpose, you can use it as a separate party place area. The open design looks great as a gondola. Add a quirky roof, and you have a structure that people will definitely love talking about when you have any social events happening in your backyard. Fuel tank container. Okay, the use of this container as a container home is going to border on the insane for some people, and they are right to think so. But if you are creative enough, you can actually still use these types of containers for your home. Basic design. A fuel tank container or a tank container used for carrying liquids. It has a round shape and can be exposed or protected by an enclosure encompassing the entire container. These are well insulated and can withstand extreme heat or cold. Access to the inside of the container is often through a small port, which is enough to insert a cleaning hose or an average-sized person to climb into to do preventative maintenance measures. Ventilation on this type of container is very poor, as there are very little openings. Main uses. How are you going to use a fuel tank for a container home? The answer? You don't. Instead, use it for what it was designed for in the first place. It is already a fantastically designed piece of equipment whose main purpose is to carry liquids, so use it for that. You can store your fuel in this type of container, or your water. If you do so choose the former, make sure you have it situated far away from your actual dwelling, or from other dwellings for that matter, as it is a dangerous risk to the community should anything happen to it. As a water container, you can attach an electric pump to it, if it does not come equipped with one, and basically feed water to your entire house without having to rely on the grid. Hanger container. This is one of the oddball containers, as not too many people are aware of it. The hanger container is a container designed to transport garments from point A to point B efficiently. Basic design. It comes with rows and rows of hangers from which garments can be placed. It is usually better insulated than a normal dry cargo steel container because some garments or textiles are very sensitive to changes in temperature. Main uses. A hanger container can be used just like a normal dry cargo steel container. What differentiates it from other containers used to create homes are the rows of bars used for hanging garments built into it. Some people think that these fixtures should be removed to give way to proper insulation. Now, if you think outside of the box, you can actually use this type of container as a container home or a part of it. The hangers can be used to attach fabric that can easily absorb heat and keep it away from the main living area. The heavy fabrics can also be used to shield the inhabitants from too much cold. It won't be as well insulated as a normal dry cargo steel container, but it can achieve a somewhat passable insulation level. So should you use this type of container? Yes and no. No, because it can't be insulated properly, so it's not really a good container home to start with. Yes, because you can still use it as part of your container house. Some people use these types of containers to store their belongings in, or use the quirky feature it has to hang fabrics in, and use that as an acoustical dampener. so it can be viable as a rec room or studio. Advantages and disadvantages. Just as sure as there are advantages to using containers to construct homes or offices, so will there be some disadvantages or minor obstacles you'd have to face in order to get what you want. Let's list down some of the advantages you can gain from using containers as a home or office. Advantages: strength and durability. If there's anything that qualifies as an understatement regarding containers, it'd have to be its strength and durability. These containers are designed to carry very heavy loads and are stackable up to 8 containers high, sometimes even more. They are very resistant to harsh environments and can withstand exposure to salty air. This is the main reason why containers are used for the very specific purpose of storage and transport of valuable goods at sea and on land. Modular. Ever play with Lego bricks when you were younger? This is basically the same thing, except you're using bigger bricks, and lifting them up and locking them in place requires a crane and nerves of steel. Containers have a standardized length and width, and can be combined with other containers to form a larger structure. Another nifty feature containers possess is the ability to lock into place. This allows for easy transportation, and better yet, this allows for lots of design possibilities. Easy to work with. Welding and cutting is a little more complicated than woodworking, but you should be able to find someone who specializes in metalworking easily. You may even come to realize that it's a lot cheaper and easier to work with than building a conventional house. Portability. As already mentioned, containers are easy to transport from one place to the other, provided there's a big enough truck to pull it, and the roads are big enough to accommodate it. As an added plus, they're pretty compliant with standard shipping sizes. Availability. There are over 30 million shipping containers in various shapes and sizes, as well as condition and use as we speak. You're bound to find one in your nearest shipyard, and you can buy it for a good price, depending on its state and condition. Expense. Used containers are available at a very cost-effective price and provide you with a structure that automatically has a lot of structural strength and integrity not found in brick and mortar constructs. It's as easy as placing the container into your desired spot, and you have 4 walls up as opposed to laying down a foundation and building a place up brick by brick. This allows for faster work to be done, saving you some money from labor costs mounting up because it is time-consuming. A quick look into the price of a container. A used one usually falls within $1,200 to $1,500 each, whereas containers in pristine conditions usually just amount to a little over $5,000, up to a maximum of $6,000. If you take that into consideration, that's a whole lot of savings as compared to a house, which usually runs upward from $15,000. Cost-effective foundations. Containers have their strength concentrated on the 4 corners of their walls. This allows for them to be able not only to support their own weight and their contents, but also the weight of other containers stacked on top of them. In short, you can just put up 4 rock-solid mounts or posts as your foundation, and make sure your 4 walls are smack dab in the middle of these 4 concrete posts, and you now have a foundation supporting your container. That's a whole lot of convenience and savings right there. Eco-friendly. As we progress in this day and age, so does the amount of our waste and pollution go up. If you're like most people who are concerned with the size of their carbon footprint, here's one way you can help our environment. When you recycle or upscale these containers to turn them into offices or homes, you're saving thousands of kilograms of steel from ending up in the landfill. Furthermore, since you'll basically be minimizing the amount of construction materials to create your home and office, you're using less and less bricks and cement. So if you're concerned with the Earth's health, here's one way you could help. It's pretty light on the wallet and can even make your conscience a bit lighter too. Before you think that containers are perfect constructs, there are disadvantages attached to it too. After all, nothing is perfect. So let's list down some disadvantages and find out if there are some remedies to them. Disadvantages. Temperature. Containers are made of steel, and steel is not as adaptable to extreme heat or cold, so you'll have to invest a little more into insulation than what you would normally invest in with a brick-and-mortar house. Still, it's not as expensive as one would be led to believe. Lack of flexibility. Containers are pretty set in their ways, and you're going to have to come to this realization now rather than later. These things can't be bent or molded in order to fit a space smaller than their original size, 20-footer or 40-footer. So you'll have to do a lot of measuring to the lot you're planning to place your container home or office in before purchasing one. Humidity. Metal and humidity are sworn enemies. Your container home is just as much prone to rust and corrosion inside as outside, so make sure you apply rust-proofing paint inside before putting up those insulated walls to avoid damage from humidity inside your container. Construction site. As we've already mentioned, containers are inflexible. Add their weight and size, and you've got a whole set of problems that you won't face with brick and mortar constructs. You can't tear a container apart in order to build it up again at the construction site. It will need to arrive in one piece and has to be lifted up to place it on top of your foundations. So you need to ensure that you have a large enough truck to bring it to the construction site. Roads that are wide enough to accommodate the length of the truck plus the container, and a huge crane to lift it up. These things will bring your expenses up, but after that's all said and done, you have a four-walled structure that's not going to go anywhere unless you use a crane again. Building permits. If there's any headache that's most common to people who built container homes or plan to build one, it has to be securing a permit for it. You will have to consult with your city engineers, and thanks to those who pioneered the construction home movement, it has gotten pretty easy over the years to secure a permit. Usually, all you need is a permit for a swimming pool, but then that could change from one state to another, only because this is a relatively new idea. Flooring. Containers come with two types of flooring, a metal one or a wooden one. You'd have to remove the wooden floor slats and treat it properly to prevent termites and chemicals that may have spilled on it over time. Alternatively, you could just come up with a new set of floor slats and install that inside your container. Cargo spillages. Containers carry everything from household items to vehicles and even chemicals. Every now and then, there may be an occurrence that means chemicals could have been spilt and seeped into the flooring of your container. You need to address that by making sure you've treated your flooring properly. Not only that, you need to ensure that your walls are free from any chemicals as well. So, get the bucket and scrubbing material out and clean the whole place out before beginning any other type of work into it. You can also opt to have it sandblasted to ensure that everything is removed properly. After that, paint it with non-toxic, rust-proofing paint. Damage. You can't expect to buy a used container without any damage on it. These things have gone through hell and back, and most probably have endured the toughest situations while in transit during their working lives. You need to ensure that all the damage you see is superficial, and none of the essential qualities of your container are compromised. Check for cracks in the welds, twisted frames, and other damages. Make sure that you make the right considerations before making the purchase. The weak roof. Everyone has espoused just how strong a container is. They haven't revealed the one weakness these containers have. Containers have relatively weak roofs. All of a container's strength is concentrated at the two ends where the posts are. The roof basically just rests on top of these posts and the edges of the walls. It's quite misleading when you see how these things are stacked up on top of each other, but if you look closely, the container on top of the bottom one is basically resting on top of the posts and not on the roof itself. The roof only has a maximum load of about 300 kilograms. You will need to reinforce the roof if you intend to have another container resting on top of the roof itself and not on the posts. Paperwork and legalities. Aside from building and zoning permits, you're bound to come across a lot of red tape, which is going to slow your project's progress to a snail's pace. Make sure you deal with all of these with the right legal outfit to keep things progressing smoothly. Logistics. Getting a container from the shipyard is the start of your logistical nightmare. You can plan in advance all you want, but the moment the plan is going to be put into action, little problems are going to occur. Every container transfer from shipyard to construction site is a nightmare waiting to explode. The best thing you can do about this is plan correctly and really put in the time and effort to ensure that there won't be any surprises happening along the way. Second thing you need to do is make the proper preparations to ensure a smooth transfer from the shipyard from the time of purchase to laying it down in its foundation at the construction site. Permanence. Your container is a mobile structure. The sooner you come to terms with that, the better your relationship with it will be. There are two sides to look at this. The lack of permanence can mean that you can, in essence, live or work wherever you want to with the help of a crane and a large enough towing vehicle. The downside to this is that you might be branded as a flight risk to your neighbors and customers. Either way, you can make this disadvantage an advantage with the proper mindset. Cost. Although a container is pretty inexpensive to begin with, working on it to make it into a suitable home or office is going to quickly rack up your expenses. So don't get fooled with the notion that your spending is over the moment you have a container with you. In truth, it's only just begun. Aesthetics. To put it bluntly, a container is ugly. Containers in their most basic forms aren't meant to be pretty. They serve a specific purpose, which is to transfer stuff. Aside from that, they are built to be able to withstand shipyard activities that could seriously damage a smaller metal object. Still, a container can be transformed into a beautiful structure with the right embellishments and improvements. All the dings and dents can be smoothed out, and severely damaged portions can be removed and replaced entirely with new panels. At the end of the repair, you can apply a layer of your desired color of paint, and you should have a container good enough to be a home or office. How to find a shipping container. Online. Shipping containers can be bought online in a variety of different sizes from a great number of different websites. A popular favorite is eBay, as there is a large amount of choice, and there is the option of entering an auction, which could get you a good price. As well as this, though, there are many websites dedicated purely to selling shipping containers. It may be worth emailing some of these websites to find out specific details about what they have in the size you are looking for. They should respond with a quote, and you can decide if that is within your budget. You can also check some online classified ads. Many times, the savings are huge. Even so, you still want to check out the container before committing to anything. Many are selling damaged, broken, or worn-out containers, thus giving you a terrible deal. As with anything online, be as analytical and careful as possible. It could save you tons of money. The main thing you want to consider with regards to buying shipping containers online is the shipping cost. When calculating your overall purchase price, make sure to add in the price it will cost to ship these huge structures, especially if they are a great distance away. What could look like a marvelous deal could actually be a money pit. For these reasons, buying your shipping containers locally could be an easier and cheaper method. Local. If the internet is not for you, then try phoning a local shipping company to inquire about what used containers they have for sale. To save transport costs, try to stick to local companies. Be aware that transporting shipping containers can be very expensive. Check out your local classified ads for great deals and worthwhile purchases. It could save you tons of money on shipping costs, although you will still need the container transported, even locally. Still, local shipping would self-evidently be much less. Buying through a local company also gives you the likely benefit of being able to inspect the container before you buy. This gives you a chance to make sure you're happy with its condition before you spend your money. At this point, beware of dents, rust, and bad smells. These are all bad signs. Thoughts on pricing. Generally, shipping containers can be bought for roughly $1,500, and like new or modified containers, cost between $5,000 and $8,000. You will need to consider the individual prices of these containers and be aware that you will likely need multiple containers. Remember, always offer less to get the best deals possible. Trust me, many times the sellers will accept. How many will your home require? Once you've decided on the sizes of the containers you require and how many of them you will need to get in touch with the local authorities and find out if you are legally allowed to put a shipping container in your desired location. Some places have restrictions on the locations you can put shipping containers. You'll need to check that your preferred location is suitable. You will need enough space to not only build your home, but also to have construction vehicles move around comfortably. Also, you will need to find a relatively level plot, unless you want to spend a large amount of money excavating the site and smoothing out the terrain. Condition considerations. Before parting with money to purchase your shipping containers, it's of paramount importance to check what condition they are in. Some shipping containers will have been used to transport goods across the ocean for years and years. These will not have a lot of durability left in them and may be structurally much weaker than newer containers. Ideally, you want one-trip containers that are relatively new and barely used. These containers are usually made in Asia, used for one long voyage carrying goods to be traded abroad, and are then sold. These are often listed as like new, such as the popular eBay description. It simply means that they are in good condition and only have a few scratches and imperfections from their singular use. One way of knowing how reliable a shipping container will be is to find out whether it is still cargo-worthy. A cargo-worthy container will have been given all clear to carry cargo across the ocean. If a container has been given this stamp of approval, then it is still suitable for its purpose and strong enough to do its job. If you really want to make a thorough job, however, then it may be worth hiring an inspector from the Institute of International Container Lessors to inspect your container. They will make a thorough inspection and decide whether the container is suitable for your long-term project. There will likely be an inspector working near the local shipping company you are buying through. Shipping containers that are categorized as is are the cheapest because they are older and most used. Usually, they are retired containers because they have become damaged, leak, or have issues with rust. These types of containers are the most common and the cheapest. With these, it's likely you can score a good price, but it's true that you get what you pay for. Buying a damaged container to turn into a home could be a risky option. Plan ahead. If you desire to build your home in an area of inclement weather or near the ocean, then make sure you look for corten steel. This is a fairly new material, often used for coping with weather without rusting. A lot of shipping containers are made from this material, as they have to stand up to harsh weather conditions and salty seas when carrying cargo. Because of this, they are not hard to find. They're generally far more resistant to rust and weather, so this could be very important in building a strong home. If you'd like your shipping container home to be freshly painted, then look for a factory paint label. This indicates that the container has only been painted once and will therefore not suffer from the same flaking of paint and rusting problems that frequently refurbished containers will. This is quite important if you'd like your new home to look like a home and have the appearance of something new and well-designed. Modified shipping containers are also available and range greatly in price. Lots of these shipping containers have been repainted or include add-ons such as roll-up doors, heating units, air conditioning units, security bars, vents, skylights, internal partitions, insulation, fans and frames. These additions may be a great advantage for building a home and may be features you are particularly looking for, which will cut down the price and effort on your part. However, these additions may compromise the strength and security of the container, and it might be better to make these additions yourself rather than trust whomever made them originally. For your home, you want to know that everything is done to a high standard. Steps in building your container home. Site works. Site works are the first important thing you should do before laying down your foundation. This should also be done before grading work, including excavation for utilities, foundations, septic, and storm water management. Bring the needed utilities to the site. If needed, you should install a septic system or any storm water management system. Foundation. The typical foundation is a slab-on-grade application for a 340-foot container, 1,000 square foot container home design. Make a 24-foot by 40-foot perimeter from concrete panels, precast, but maybe concrete or concrete blocks. For drainage, excavate the perimeter and fill it with gravel. Drop in the precast panels via a crane, and these panels should be tied together. These panels have exterior waterproofing membranes and insulation that are factory added. Run the utilities, electrical, water, and gas lines to the foundation's base and then to their proper locations as indicated in the plans. After that, backfill, soil compact, add gravel, lay out reinforcing bars, and pour the slab on the foundation walls. Even DIY aficionados would need the help of the general contractor in carrying this procedure out. Modifications to the container. Monocoque bodies characterize shipping containers. The corrugated panels, back, sides, and roof, purlins, floors, frame, front doors, and rails form a structural skin that is integrated. They are durable and can carry floor loads that exceeds what is required in typical home construction. However, when they are modified, penetrating members and cutting holes, they become weak. Thus, it is important to review with an architect or structural engineer, despite the modification level your shipping container home entails. In removing the container's corrugation along the length of one side, the structural integrity is compromised. The container, with no reinforcement, structurally fails. As a rule, when you take away parts of the corrugated paneling, steel framing should be used to frame out openings. Moreover, roof and column support will be needed depending on the wind/roof loads and the opening size. Steel framing, cutting, and welding form a large part of the shipping container home's construction and design. Because it is expensive, steel construction is not normally used in the design and use in single-family dwellings and smaller homes. In building container homes and to offset expenses, you should have reinforcing and welding done off-site before putting the containers on-site and commencing interior fit-out. Majority of container resellers can do these modifications. If you plan to make this a DIY project and you do not have the facilities to undergo such a procedure, you should have container modification work done off-site before delivery to your location. Setting and securing the containers to the foundation. As the modified containers arrive on the site, have them crane lifted onto the foundation one by one. They should be hooked in place, and they should be welded down to integrate them completely with the foundation. Each heavy-gauge container can hold 57,000 pounds, and it is also durable. This is why they only have to be fastened to the corners. The container bottom corner blocks are melded to steel plates and are embedded into the slab. This process secures the house to the foundation. The corner blocks are welded into one another to secure containers. Adding a roof. You may have or not have a roof, depending on how your containers are combined and where you build. If you want to have a home that is not too industrial looking, a roof would be a nice touch. It is also easy to install a roof, especially this architectural component is not load-bearing. The cheapest and easiest type of roof to build is a shed roof or a low-pitched gable roof. You should know, however, that the roof should also be insulated, and you may need to access the space between the roof and your ceiling. Installing architectural elements. When the shipping containers were modified off-site, you already have the provision for your architectural elements. The next step for you is to install exterior doors, windows, any skylights, and flashing. The windows should be set into the openings that were laid out and cut before the shipping containers were delivered onto your site. All openings for doors and windows must be framed with steel sections to regain structural integrity lost through modification. Hollow rectangular sections are good, but L sections also work fine. Installing utilities, fixtures, and floors. On both sides, inside and out, of the remaining container walls, Spray Supertherm insulation coating. Supertherm is a 4-part, high-performance ceramic coating and sticks to the shipping container's steel surface. You can encapsulate your floor with epoxy and create an extra barrier by insulating a subfloor on top of it. Clean the floors with 91% isopropyl alcohol to remove any acid adhesion or surface oils. Coat the floor with low-V epoxy, which is a Progressive Epoxy Polymers product. The epoxy is not only a physical barrier, it can also protect against vapors from chemical treatments. Sign-off and inspection. Having staged inspections throughout the construction process with the building official and contractor, this means checking on the foundation, electrical and planning, fire safety, and architectural. After that, put together for the contractor the final punch list/check. Review this list with your contractor. Afterwards, have the building official inspect your newly finished shipping container home for issuance of the certificate of occupancy. Financing a shipping container home. If you already have giant stacks of money around to buy or build a new home, then you may want to skip this section. If, however, you are planning to sell your home or to find some kind of financing to help you create your shipping container home, then shipping containers provide a unique challenge. Building with a construction loan. Typically, if you wanted to build a home, you would try getting a construction loan from your bank. In short, you create a timetable for building the home, your plans for having it finished, and give them a budget for the house. If approved, you will then only pay interest on the loan as it is being built, and upon full and final completion, this will become a normal home loan where the house works as collateral. You can just get a construction loan, not a single closed construction loan which automatically turns into a mortgage, but the interest rates are likely to be higher. Whether or not you go for a single construction loan or you go for that and a mortgage, a construction loan will usually have a higher interest rate. You will also usually need to have a fairly strong banking history to qualify for the loan. There is no real collateral until the house is built, which makes it a riskier prospect for the bank. Of course, the price of construction should be cheaper than simply buying a new and already built home, so the extra interest is not necessarily as much as it first appears. The down payment for a loan like this is typically much higher than the loan for a conventional home mortgage, though, sometimes as much as 25% of the total project. For an individual with no history of building homes, getting a construction loan can be difficult. You need to prove, very convincingly, that your home is going to be built by professionals and it will get done in a reasonable time frame. You are building it with someone else's money, and you can't simply choose to not finish the home. Shipping container homes take on another dimension of difficult because they are seen as unusual homes by lenders. A lender wants to take the fewest risks possible, and they want evidence that what you are building is actually worth something. If there are no shipping container homes in your area that are selling, then there is no evidence it is worth building your home. Often, larger banks will simply not fund this kind of project, and you will have to look to smaller banks in your local area that can help with this kind of home. You will need to make sure they have financed other prefabricated or modular homes in your area and work carefully with them to devise a plan that will work for both of you. A private property appraiser may be able to help you if they have experience in the area and direct you towards a suitable lender. This is where you have to make a big decision if you are planning to sell a home to finance this type of shipping container home, as it's not guaranteed that such a property will be worth much in years to come. If you are building this home as a solid investment for the future, you may have to think again. For many people, the best option is to raise a considerable amount of money on your own and then try to get a basic construction loan. This loan often grows as the price of the build grows. Once built, you can then have the property appraised and get finance on that property. Building without a construction loan. Many people coming to shipping container homes aren't necessarily established homeowners with good credit ratings. They are looking for the home specifically because it is cheaper to build and they don't want to go the traditional route. If you have no banking history and no property to sell, then few banks are going to help you get construction loan because it is simply too risky for them. This doesn't mean you have to give up on your dream. as there are several other options. One of the most similar to a construction loan is to find a construction company that will take care of financing for you. If you find the correct company, they will only require that you have a deposit and a steady income. After that, they will finance the building and give you a mortgage for the property when it is complete. This is a good option if you don't want the hassle of doing paperwork for 2 or 3 loans, and you want to deal with someone that will have a better understanding of what you are doing. The big catch, though, is that construction companies are possibly going to be even more conservative than a bank in what they will help finance. If they don't perceive a property as valuable, they won't help you finance it. If that option still presents you with difficulties, then you will need to become more creative. Most of these loans include the cost of land, but if you have access to land you can build on, then things become easier. Construction loans are necessary if you want to build quickly, as you need a lot of money at once. If you are planning on doing more of the work yourself, on site, and at your own pace, then the need for a large loan is not as pressing. You will need to finish the project to ensure you are not wasting money, but taking a year or even 2 is a better investment if you can avoid paying lots of interest and bypass a serious loan altogether. If you intend to build on land where you already lived or that is already partly developed, then you will find that many of your costs go down dramatically. What you will need to ensure, especially if you are going to need planning permission to build, is that you have all of the basics in place to lay a container on a foundation and so that you can leave it knowing it will be sealed and weatherproof. Getting the permissions, the plans, the foundation, the transport, and the shipping container to begin work will mean that you will need to have a considerable amount of money up front. You can think of this like a down payment on a mortgage, and you could cover some of it with a reasonable personal loan, which can have quite competitive interest rates for smaller amounts, or by borrowing the money from family and friends. If you have a home, you might be able to refinance it again and free up some money that way. The more you can do yourself, the less money you will need to borrow and ultimately pay interest on. For someone without much ability to bring a lot of capital quickly, you will need to look into cheaper and recyclable ways of doing things, and you will need to plan a smaller property that is accomplished mostly with the tools around. When bringing outside help, you will need to work to a very tight and cost-effective plan. If you currently own a home, you may consider renting it out while you work on your property to raise money and to incentivize you to finish your shipping container home. When figuring out costs, always assume there will be far more costs than you had anticipated, whether that is fees for agents, the costs of paperwork, unexpected additions to the property, or just structural or design changes to the property. If you are not confident you can fully finance the project, then it is not wise to begin on the project. You may still enjoy planning and preparing to build a shipping container home without the right financing ready, but you will need to be sure of this before you go too far ahead. Considerations when constructing a shipping container home. It is easy to see why shipping container homes have become so popular. The whole thing seems easy enough. All you need to do is buy the container or containers. They're prefabricated, so one container can equal one room. You can stack the containers together, and you have multiple rooms. If you join 2 or more containers together, you have a larger room. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, not really. There are plenty of factors to consider when using a shipping container or shipping containers to make a house. The first thing to keep in mind is that these were never really meant to be used for building. They are cargo containers, and they have been built for that. In addition, just having a container is not enough. You need to think about things such as an HVAC system, insulation, and so on. It does not help either that since this is such an unusual type of home, you do not have too many experts handy to guide you and advise you. Keeping all this in mind, here are a few tips from experts in the field of shipping container homes. These are people who are either designers or owners of such homes, and the advice they have to give comes from the experience that they have gained building and designing these types of homes. See before you buy. This is the advice given by Larry Wade. The company you buy the containers from will reassure you, of course, that the containers you have bought are in good condition. But remember that shipping containers are used to transport all sorts of goods in all sorts of conditions, ranging from bad roads to rough seas. While they are built to be durable enough to withstand these conditions, they are also going to beat all heck, as Wade put it when he received his containers. When you stop to think about it, it really is good advice for buying just about anything. When it comes to shipping containers, therefore, consider this advice gold. Spend a little extra. While lamenting the state of the shipping containers he bought, Larry Wade also wished that he had spent just a bit extra. One-trip containers are easily available and do not cost that much than a used container. Most importantly, they're brand new, so you do not really have to worry about the condition of the container or containers that you buy. Having said that, the first tip still holds good. Always see what you are buying before you actually buy it. Learn the local regulations. Of course, this depends on the size of the container you are using, but that again depends on what the minimum size to get a building permit is. Do you see what I mean? Every county is going to have its own rules and regulations. When you expand that to state and then to country, things become even more complicated. You no longer have to worry about just council rules. There are different laws governing what is appropriate building material and what is not, who can build it, and so on. Most importantly, you have to take into account different climates and weather patterns. What works in Chile, for example, will not necessarily work in Denmark, and vice versa. Determine where you want to locate your shipping container home, and then research the local rules and regulations thoroughly so that you know what you can and cannot do, what permits you need to get, and so on. Find someone to take care of all of it. It is important to find one person or company who can take you through the entire process, from start to finish. This means the person who gets designs and modifies the exterior also takes care of the interior. Again, this is something that makes sense when you think about it. The company that builds the shipping container home will know all about the structure of the home and can incorporate designs into the interior that not only complement the exterior but work with it on a structural basis. This also means that you, as the homeowner, do not have to go through the headache of remembering stuff you had no idea you needed to remember. Of course, the problem with this particular tip is that there are not that many people or companies who can do this for you. It will really depend on where you are located, what your budget is like, and other such considerations. Know the shipping container market. Do a lot of research before you buy a shipping container or containers to construct your home. As I have mentioned in previous chapters, shipping containers come in a variety of sizes. Look up the various sizes and see what you need. Investigate the market thoroughly to know what is available and what is not. Do not just get the first thing that clears your head. Remember that you'll probably have to install an HVAC in addition to other fixtures that will dramatically reduce the clearing space. Consider all of this before you buy a container. Understand the structure of a shipping container. This is something that you cannot afford to forget. As I've said earlier, a shipping container is meant to do exactly that: ship stuff around. It is not meant for construction. The roof of a shipping container is fairly thin and dents quite easily. The walls of the container act as both braces and load bearers. All this becomes very important when you consider that you will have to cut out portions of the walls of the container to make doors and windows. The more portions you remove, the less load the walls can bear. Remove enough section and you'll find the whole thing collapsing about your head. It is simple physics. You need to remember that for every piece you cut out from a wall, you need to compensate elsewhere. Huge savings do not happen. Yes, shipping containers are relatively cheap, but think about it. Are you just going to get the container, put a few sticks of furniture in it, and start living in it? You will need to get your containers reinforced, stacked, cut, insulated, prepared for plumbing and electricity, and many other such basics. You will also need to install an HVAC system that will require even more cutting and modifications. All of this together can add up to a sum that is not significantly different from what you would have spent buying a house of the same size or with the same number of rooms. In the end, modifying a shipping container to make it into your dream home can end up costing as much as the ordinary dream home would. Minimize welding. Since this is a metal box we are talking about, at some point in time, you will end up welding some parts of it. However, keep in mind that welding can be a pretty expensive proposition, not to mention the fact that it requires an expertise that you will probably not have. Another minus is that welding can take a long time. Therefore, try to keep the welding to a minimum when setting up your shipping container home. Of course, you may not have a choice about it, but if you do your research, you should be able to figure out how to manage it. Know about the insulation. A shipping container is made of steel. As such, it is an excellent conductor of heat and cold. If you live in a region with a colder climate, you could end up freezing in your home. Another problem with lower temperatures is condensation. Inside the warmth of your home, the colder air will condense and form droplets of water on the walls. In the long term, that translates into rust. Do proper research on how to insulate your shipping container home adequately. Remember, not only do you have to worry about heat escaping, but you also need to make sure that your walls do not end up rusting. What about the plumbing? This is one of those things we do not really think about. After all, when we are buying a home, plumbing is already there. We may have to look into the condition of the pipes and so on, but we do not really have to worry about getting the plumbing in the first place. The same cannot be said of a shipping container. It is basically a rectangular box. You are going to have to consult the designer and determine exactly where you want the plumbing and learn what kind of plumbing the container can handle. If you are planning to stack more than one shipping container for more rooms and a bigger building, you may want to have the plumbing chases cut out of the ceilings and floors so that the pipes can be run easily. Thought about the wind yet? You are basically talking about large sheets of corrugated steel here. When the wind blows, it is going to make the steel walls and sometimes even roof vibrate. This can make for a pretty noisy home, especially if you live in an area that is wind-prone. Again, you need to do research here. First of all, find out whether the location where you are planning to construct your shipping container home does indeed get a lot of wind. Next, you need to find out what you can do to mitigate the effects of the wind. One good idea is to plant vegetation with heavy foliage so that it can screen off the wind and you can enjoy a quiet home. As I'm sure you've noticed by now, one point that I keep repeating in many points is research. This is not a coincidence. When experts and shipping container homeowners were asked what they wished they had known before they started on this journey, the ones who had the least amount of problems were the ones who had researched the subject as thoroughly as possible. The thing is, this is a new type of housing. There are not that many people in your immediate vicinity who can give you reliable advice on this, unlike when you go to buy a conventional house. Therefore, to save yourself a lot of time, effort, and even money, it is a good idea that you first research this topic as completely as possible. Once you are armed with information, you'll find that it is much easier to get the whole thing done. But do remember that mistakes are inevitable, especially if you are doing it for the first time. You will need to plan for such contingencies. Doing adequate research will ensure that the mistakes you make are not serious, and you can enjoy your shipping container home once it is completed, without any qualms. Preparing the site. You've purchased your shipping container, and now you're ready for it to be delivered. But as with all things, there are a few considerations you'll want to have in place before the delivery truck shows up. As we've talked about before, prior to scheduling a delivery for your shipping container, make sure that the land on which the container will be placed is allowed for residential living. More about permits and zoning laws later. Once you have all the legal aspects in place, you can move forward with preparing the site for delivery. Here are the various steps to complete so that the delivery of your shipping container may run as smooth as possible. Communicate. Communication with the delivery driver is one of the most important details that you must not overlook. Before the delivery driver shows up with your shipping container, you will both need to have an idea of the logistics of delivering the shipping container to a designated site. Once the delivery driver knows more about the location and how they can reach the particular site, he or she will be much more able to come up with the plan on how to deliver the container into the precise location. Knowing the area in advance also allows the delivery driver to consider what additional equipment they will need in order to make the job easier. The desired location of your doors and windows on the shipping container will also need to be discussed with the delivery driver. This is a crucial step. The way in which the container is loaded onto the flatbed of the truck will directly impact how it comes off when it's delivered. Once at the site, there is no easy way to turn and rotate the shipping container, so be sure to discuss this important detail with the delivery driver before they arrive at the loading destination. Choose a delivery method. The most common way for a shipping container to be delivered to location is by truck, but there are some options depending on the size or style of the shipping container. There are two standard trailer options, including flatbed trailers, tilt bed trailers. Which one of these trailers is a better option? It depends on what other equipment you'll have at the delivery site and your budget. For example, a tilt bed trailer is a good option if you do not have a crane or forklift designated for the size and shape of a shipping container. This trailer bed style allows the delivery driver to drop off the container in the designated location without requiring additional equipment. There is a consideration to make when it comes to tilt bed trailers. These only accommodate shipping containers that range between 20 and 40 feet. Another option is the flatbed trailer, which is the least expensive but does require the use of additional tools, including a forklift or crane, which incurs an additional charge. Once you know where you want to place the shipping container, you can determine if the cost savings when using a flatbed trailer is better than opting for the tilt bed trailer. Preparing the land for a shipping container. Before the delivery truck brings your shipping container, the land where it will be placed must be ready for such a container. Once the container is delivered, there is no easy way to move it, so you can make adjustments. The ground where you want the shipping container must be completely flat and firm. If it is not, you run the risk of structurally compromising the integrity of the home or having an uneven surface, both of which have a huge impact on your shipping container home before it's even placed on the ground. Another thing to consider is potential flooding. Even if you do not plan to place your shipping container near any sources of water, you must always allow for proper drainage of water away from the container. This means never placing the container in a low-lying area. Even the slightest elevation surrounding you can create a potential disaster if there is rain or snow. Proper drainage also impacts the quality of your foundation. If you don't have a way for water to leave the area, you risk it softening up the foundation under your shipping container and causing it to sink into the ground. This will cause your home to be structurally unsafe. Depending on your ground conditions, you can choose from a variety of foundation options: gravel, hard grass, compact dirt, cement, pavement. If you do not want to use these options, you can also use concrete blocks/footings for small containers. These blocks/footings are to be placed under the corners of the containers, elevating it up from the ground and preventing sinking. This option is not the most ideal, but does provide you an alternative if the other foundation options are not available. The table below will give you an estimation of the bearing of each footing. For those who don't mind paying a bit more, a chassis is another option that also works well if you plan to move your shipping container at any point in the future. A chassis is a type of foundation used to secure a shipping container in place during the transportation process. What to do on delivery day. The delivery day has arrived, and it's an exciting step in the process of building your shipping container home. There are some logistic considerations to keep in mind regarding the delivery. The most important is that the delivery truck and trailer is going to be rather large, so it must be able to reach the delivery location and get out. Before the delivery truck arrives, be sure to clear away anything that might be in the path of the truck, plants and trees included. Shipping containers weigh tons, so they're not simple to move around. If you have existing landscaping around the delivery site, be prepared for it to experience some markings, especially if you have grass in the area, as the trucks and trailers are heavy as well. For the best results, The delivery truck driver will need to back up to the designated space, then use a tilt bed or crane to remove the shipping container from the trailer and place it down onto the foundation. Dealing with permits. Permits. It's the word that often brings up feelings of dread when it comes to building a home. In the case of shipping container homes, the concept of permits cannot be avoided. Despite being a substantial obstacle between building and moving into the home, there are a few reasons why permits are important. They serve to protect the health of the inhabitants in the home. Ensure the home is safe for dwellers and the land around it. Keep residential areas consistent and cohesive with the rest of the neighborhood. As you have garnered by now, shipping container homes are not traditional, which means that permits and codes designated for traditional homes don't always apply to a structure such as a steel shipping container. The trend of shipping container homes is still new enough that there are very few official regulations on the book in regards to how such homes can be built safely and according to code. This makes securing permits a bit harder and potentially drawn out. Another thing to consider is that codes differentiate between cities due to codes being created at a municipal level. This means that codes you might need to follow in Los Angeles are much different to those elsewhere, such as Denver or Salt Lake City. Since building permits can take some time to secure, it's always a good idea to contact your city government offices for specific information about building codes in your area before getting started. You certainly don't want to run into problems when you're nearing completion of your shipping container home, because you learn that some aspects are not acceptable for living. Regulations cover a number of aspects of your home, including installation, doors and windows, fire regulations, climate control. Another reason for making sure your home follows proper codes is that your home insurance will depend on it. Be sure to follow through with an insurance agent to ensure that your home will follow all the necessary requirements for coverage. Do I need a permit? Every city in the country has a different set of rules and regulations, which means that obtaining a permit will highly depend on what the laws are for your given city. The United States follows the International Building Code, IBC, so every city or jurisdiction will enforce the codes that they feel are necessary for the location. Building codes are often needed when it comes to adding to or modifying the structural integrity of the home, including electricity, plumbing, window modifications, mechanical systems, sewage modifications. Depending on the design of the home, exterior work might also require a permit. Removing retaining walls, adding fencing, or even installing a deck around the home all fall under the possibilities of needing a permit. In any case, always check with the local government office or city hall to determine if your plans require permits before you get started. When it comes to shipping container homes, there are a number of reasons why it might be hard to secure a permit. For example, while a steel shipping container is structurally stronger than a traditional house, much of the load-bearing weight is located in its frame, not the walls. Also, there is no insulation, and it needs a complete remodification to transform from a steel container into a home. Walls, floors, ventilation, and electricity all need to be added for it to be livable. Where to obtain a permit? As previously mentioned, your best bet for understanding exactly what you need in your location will depend on what your municipality requires. Every city is different. Be prepared for a bit of a slowdown too, as shipping container homes are still very new, and therefore many municipalities, especially those in more rural areas, still don't have much in the way of permits and codes available for these types of homes. If you aren't sure where to start or when to start, it is recommended that you speak to the building department before you begin construction. To help articulate what you plan on doing, have your building designs and some other examples of shipping container homes just to illustrate your plan to those who might not be familiar. If you can find examples of shipping container homes in your state, even better. Tips for dealing with permits. There's usually no easy way around the concept of permits. These tips will make things a bit easier and hopefully prevent you from making a costly and time-consuming mistake. Verify the zoning information for your desired plot of land from the zoning department at City Hall before you start building. This cannot be stressed enough. Determine what rules you will need to follow to accommodate zone specifications. Prepare and show construction plans to City Hall to determine what permits you'll need. Get ready to build. How much will it cost? With the housing market in a vulnerable stage, and with a majority of people having difficulties affording rent, there is always the continuous hunt for cheaper, more affordable forms of housing. The concept of tiny house living has grown tremendously popular through recent years, and it has given rise to alternative forms of housing, including shipping container homes. But shipping container houses have grown larger in the past years, with some measuring as large as traditional homes, without as much of a cost. Shipping container homes, or the steel cargo units used in making them, primarily originate from China and other parts of Asia. They are actually considered to be some of the most popular exports received by countries across the globe. These cargo units allow for the safe and secure delivery of different products across oceans, and also serve the purpose of standing as building blocks for unique and environmentally friendly homes. These days, a huge number of international freights are delivered in steel containers that can be stacked upon each other and stored on ship decks, offloaded onto tractor-trailer backs, and carted into trains. In some cases, these cargo containers are shipped back to the source for reuse. Other times, they are stored empty in shipment container graveyards. There are ways to recycle these containers if they are no longer meant to be reused. It is possible to scrap the steel or melt it down, or the containers can be cleaned out and used as building blocks for shipping container homes. The latter promotes the lowest carbon footprint, making it a viable solution to the need and demand for ample housing around the world. Thanks to the influence of architects, these units have not only been converted into storage houses, but residential homes, guest houses, studios, offices, retail store space, and many more. Container units come prefabricated with a couple of standard sizes. To make them suitable for residential living, architects have found a way to modify them, increasing the amount of livable space that homeowners interested in shipping container homes can enjoy. When positioned side by side, these can provide thousands of square footages, which can further be increased by having containers stacked atop one another. The cost of this kind of home depends primarily on how many shipping containers will be used during construction. It starts with the type of shipping container to be used. These can be bought new or used. New ones definitely cost more, while used container units can be bought for several $100s to $3,000 on average. What homeowners get for this amount is a complete structure readily available for modification. Made out of solid steel and welded together in the best possible way, these structures are extremely durable and offer an excellent yet cost-effective base or foundation for a house meant to be lived in for years on end. The only catch with shipping container homes is that more often than not, it is the homeowner who must own the land that it resides in. Aside from purchasing the container units and spending on the land, homeowners must also shoulder various costs, which include the securing of permits, utilities connections, electricity grid connections, and gas connections, to name a few. Depending on the homeowner, he or she can reduce the carbon footprint even more by installing solar panels in the home. A basic solar setup would cost about $5,000, depending on how green a homeowner wants to go. There are people who live completely off the grid and have a complex solar panel setup in their shipping container home. Although it may come at a large initial expense, it generates an excess of savings over time. With this type of home, it can be built in a relatively short period of time. This means that labor expenses usually measure to about a third of what a traditional house may cost to build or renovate. For those who want to live in a shipping container home, provided that they have the land to house it in and their area permits this type of residence, here are the initial sources of expense that come with such a project. Steel containers. Site preparation, foundation. Assembly and modification of cargo units. Installation of insulation, heating, and cooling systems. Plumbing. Electricity. Roofing. Flooring. Furnishings. Windows and entryways. External landscaping. Other finishing. The thing about shipping container homes is that they can be built off-site and delivered to the final location ready to be lived in. If this is the option chosen by the homeowner, he or she should add the corresponding shipping costs to the total expense. Depending on how far the delivery point is, this can amount to several $1,000s of additional expense. An amount as little as $20,000 can provide an ample shelter complete with a front porch. This amount can easily yield a 350 square foot home that is perfect for a bachelor's pad. For this type of home, construction will usually take several weeks to a couple of months. Before investing in this type of house, it is good to plan everything from assuring the availability of land, securing permits, checking local zoning and building regulations, and setting aside a reasonable budget for the build. Usually, overall costs go beyond what was originally quoted. So as not to be overwhelmed by any additional expense, it would be wise to set aside an additional 10 to 20% of the total budget for emergency needs. Transporting your container. Once you have purchased your shipping container, you need to have it shipped to your site. Just as in the other steps, you need to consider the method of transport that is right for you. You also need to remember to keep your transportation costs within budget. It would be even better to have your container shipped for an amount that's under budget. This would be one more way in which you save money. Working with the dealer. One way that you can save on transportation costs is to try to cut a deal with a dealer that sold you the container. If you are attempting to pursue this route, it's important to remember that you should figure on the cost of transporting your container to be 20% of the cost of the container. If the dealer is close to your site, then you could easily choose this option. Removing the container off of the transport truck can be done by a crane. This would require the renting of a crane. But if you are going with having the dealer transport your container, renting a crane shouldn't be necessary. Most dealers make use of a swing-through truck that has a crane attached to it that aids in offloading the container. A cheaper option. While the cost of having the dealer deliver your container isn't a large sum of money, one of the benefits of building your own shipping container home is saving on the cost of construction. Since you are building your own container home, why not transport the container yourself? To do so, you would need to rent a truck and a crane or heavy-duty, rough-terrain forklift. Renting a truck requires having a commercial trucker's license. If you have a CDL, this option will be easy for you, especially if you took ease of access into consideration when securing the site for your home. If you don't have a CDL, maybe a friend or family member does. You can either pay them a small amount or get them to do you a favor by having them drive the truck for you. These options tend to be cheaper than having the dealer deliver your container, unless you talk the dealer down on the cost of transportation. Yet it is not the cheapest option. An even cheaper option. The cheapest option for transporting your container is to rent a truck with a lift bed attached to it. By doing so, you don't have to pay for the rental of either a crane or a forklift. Once again, you can either drive the truck yourself or have someone else do it for you, depending on whether or not you have a CDL. This method of delivery and offloading is pretty simple. Once on site, the truck is backed up to the foundation, the bed is lifted, and the container slides into the foundation. Any minor adjustments to the container positioning can be made by using a crowbar to push the corners of the container. Transportation choices and budget. Whatever transport and offloading option you choose, it's important that you remain within your budget. You won't be making use of the ability to save money with a shipping container home if you go over budget when transporting and offloading your container. Doing this yourself may take extra work, but it will save you money. You can also take pride in knowing that this is one more step of the building process that you have seen to yourself. You're not just moving a container, you're building your own home. You're also one more step closer to completing your home. Once your container is safely on its foundation, you need to complete the installation process. Hiring a contractor. It is always a wise decision to consult a reliable home contractor when it comes to a build like this. Choosing a reliable and trustworthy professional can make a huge difference when it comes to a job done properly or an utter nightmare. A rule of thumb is to steer clear of phone books and newspaper advertisements. Do not count on these things, as the best professionals rarely require such marketing. These people get work through word of mouth from satisfied clients. Sourcing through referrals is the best option here, as people have had a first-hand experience as to the kind of work a contractor can provide. They have seen him at work and can provide a certain level of expectation. Start by consulting family, friends, and neighbors that have had construction work done recently. It is beneficial to have a reliable contractor because with the help of other professionals, he or she can transform a typical container unit into something truly out of the ordinary. Do not hesitate to ask. Here is an initial series of questions that you can ask the person who made the referral. Were you satisfied with the output? Was construction completed on time? Would you rehire this contractor? Were there issues with daily cleanup? Was the contractor approachable? Was the contractor open to sudden plan alterations? Did the contractor have his own team of workers? Did the contractor have his own material suppliers? What was the agreed-upon mode of payment and schedule? Keep in mind that even if a contractor was referred to you, it is still necessary for you to run a complete background check and interview. It is a good idea to consider 3 to 5 potential applicants for your construction needs. Doing so provides you with options, especially since these professionals may come to offer varying skills and services, not to mention fees. The most challenging aspect of any build for a homeowner is not the work itself, but locating a competent contractor who can deliver quality output in a timely manner and reasonable costs. When conducting your background check, work with local agencies, preferably those handling consumer affairs, or a chapter of the Better Business Bureau operating in your area. Check for blacklists, complaint histories, and the like. 1 or 2 offenses may be acceptable, within reason of course, but take repeated offenses as a red flag. Aside from checking a contractor's work history, check for licensing records as well. A contractor must pass a standard competency examination to be issued a license. The absence of this legal document also signals a red flag, possibly an illegal or limited practice. Keep in mind, though, that possessing a license does not equate with excellent workmanship. This is still something left for the client to decide. A license offers the sense of professionalism and commitment to the job at hand. Insurance is essential. A contractor should be insured, and the homeowner should have ample insurance coverage as well. Coverage for physical injuries on site, property damage, and natural disasters are necessary. See to it that a working comprehensive policy is in order before any of the work begins. Significant effort is necessary, but there are ways by which homeowners can spot questionable contractors. Here are red flags that you should be mindful of. Special or bargain prices. High-pressure tactics or overselling. Refusal to quote a total cost for the build. Failure to provide work references. Unverifiable license information. Unverifiable insurance details. Unverifiable contact information. Non-existent affiliation to recognized industry associations. Unsolicited contact. Leftover material accumulation. Oftentimes, a construction project requires several contractors, a general contractor and subcontractors working under his or her command. The number of contractors needed for a build depends on the size of the project and the requirements imposed upon by the homeowner. A general contractor works by organizing the work schedule, securing the necessary permits, and coordinating with material suppliers. The subcontractors serve to handle specific elements of the build. One may be hired to handle all of the electrical work and utilities, while another may be in charge of built-in furnishings or external landscaping. In some cases, general contractors have teams of subcontractors that they can refer. If this network is unavailable, it will be the homeowner's responsibility to find these specialists one by one. Searching for contractors is only one part of the equation. What follows is getting a bid from each prospect being considered. A written bid is necessary, as it can be transformed into a bidding contract. With any type of construction project, every correspondence has to be on paper. Be sure to get bids covering the same job tasks or output, manpower requirements, material sourcing, and the like. This will make it easier for you to choose the best contractor to hire. Engaging in price negotiations during the bidding process is fine, as long as all requests from both parties are reasonable. All bids and negotiations should be finalized before any contract is signed, as altering parts of it later on can lead to more expenses on your part. When the right contractor is chosen, a shipping container home or office is easy to attain. Here is an example of a great concept for a shipping container space. Just like any other product or service in the market, being cheap does not make it the best considerable option. In this line of work, price usually dictates quality. A home is something that is meant to last for a long time, so paying a bit more for better output is worth doing. By paying more, a homeowner will not only be entitled to a better effort from the builders, but better materials as well. Even if the costs are higher in the short run, the generated savings in the long run will be greater. In negotiating a fair contract, make sure that the document spells out all the terms of the work involved, as this will help both parties reduce or eliminate the occurrence of time-consuming and costly misunderstandings during the build. Here are the initial pieces of information that the contract should carry. Contractor's name and contact information. Contractor's license information. Subcontractors' names and contact information. Homeowner's name and contact information. Agreed upon work timetable, start and finish dates included. Agreed upon mode of payment and payment schedule. Scope of work, securing permits included. List of materials needed, specifications included. List of machinery and equipment needed. Demolition and cleanup provisions. Terms of the agreement. Arbitration provisions, dispute clauses. Limitations of liability for the homeowner, code violations, contractor obligations. Insurance provisions. Signatures of both parties and the date of signing. Addendum for non-inclusions to the contract. Construction projects are normally done in phases, and payments follow suit as they are settled in stages over the course of the build. This includes the delivery of key supplies and materials. A contractor will require a down payment of about 10% or so. Protect yourself by not paying more than what is necessary during this stage. In most cases, even with initially trustworthy contractors, they have the tendency of using excess payments to finance projects of other clients, oftentimes leaving the financier, you, high and dry as time passes. Always be in communication with contractors. Aside from receiving frequent project updates, this enables all parties to resolve problems as early as possible. Resolving issues during the course of the build is better than having to attend to them after the turnover. Contractors, during the build, are keener on fixing problems like leaking roofs or faulty wiring and the like. Getting them to attend to these issues later on will be quite the challenge, as they have already received payment for the initial service and won't be at a loss for the sloppy output. A good security measure to ensure that you are extended reasonable aftercare services is to include a clause in the contract allowing you to hold the final payment installment for a month after the turnover. Aside from ensuring that all construction as per your specifications are met 100%, the full payment to the main contractor should only be given after you have obtained signed documents covering payments to subcontractors, suppliers, and other expenses for the build. These official release papers are called mechanics lien waivers. They stand as receipts for services and products received. Without the formal release from obligation, these agencies can have a mechanics lien placed against your house until all payables have been settled. Demand these waivers together with official receipts for all purchases and expenses from the general contractor. The actual building process. Having a shipping container home obviously has some amazing benefits. It's something that a lot of people are interested in, and is obviously why you're reading this book in the first place. There comes a crucial point, however, where you must decide if you would like to undertake the building process yourself or use contractors to perform the build. There are companies that will complete the entire process for you, and others that will simply work with you along the way. Your decision ultimately comes down to your confidence in your building and management abilities and your budget. To undertake a build like this, you must have a certain amount of building skill and knowledge. You must be able to get building permits for your area, acquire the tools necessary, and have the skills to follow all of the steps in the building process. If you are not comfortable doing the whole thing yourself, then you can obviously hire some contractors along the way to give you a hand with certain aspects, such as fitting windows, or you can hire a company to complete the entire thing for you. This will result in a faster build that is often of a higher quality if you are not actually a builder by trade, but will typically cost more overall, and you don't get the same satisfaction as you would if you completed the project on your own. If you decide to build it yourself, you need to follow the following steps. Step 1. Design. At this stage, you will start by brainstorming the basic ideas of your container home, the size it should be, and what it should include. How many rooms would you like? How big should it be? What features should it include? This is where you answer all of these questions. You can then start drawing out sample ideas, or base your designs off of pre-existing plans. A great tool to use is SketchUp, which allows you to draw in 3D. It's commonly used for designing regular homes, but you can also obviously use it for shipping container homes to get a better idea of how the finished product will look. Once you have the plans figured out, you will need to see an architect or builder to help you finalize the plans and have them professionally drawn up. The architect will be able to tell you which of your plans are possible structurally and will often have some great suggestions for various improvements. Once you have your official plans drawn up, it's on to the next stage. Step 2. Lay the foundation. You will need a solid foundation to build your container home on, just like any regular home. Unless you are a professional in this field, it's best to hire a contractor for this job. You need to make sure that the foundation is done correctly, with areas set out for the plumbing to be fitted. If you're planning a poured concrete foundation, it's a good idea to embed steel fittings into the concrete where the corners of the shipping container will rest. This will help to support the container, but obviously consult with an engineer or architect about the best choice of foundation for your particular design. Step 3. Purchase the containers. The next step will be purchasing the actual containers and having them delivered on site. You need to choose between brand new containers versus second-hand, and also will have to choose a size of container that suits your plan. Next, if your plan requires an extreme modification to your container, such as removing a large section of it, this should be done. If not, then it's time to place your shipping container on the foundation. This is best done with a crane, which will obviously be one of the big expenses in the build. In some instances, you may also get away with using a forklift to maneuver the container. At this point, your container is basically an empty shell, sitting on a solid foundation. Now it's time to really get to work to turning that empty container into a fully functioning home. Step 4. Connect the containers. Most likely, your home will consist of more than one container. At this point in time, they will be simply sitting next to each other on your foundation, but won't be structurally attached. The easiest way to attach these containers for DIYers is with a series of bolts drilled through the containers. This obviously isn't the strongest way to join the containers, but it's fast, inexpensive, and makes it possible to unattach them in the future if you want to make modifications. A stronger way to actually connect the containers would be through welding them together. If you connect the containers with bolts, you can always get them welded together later for a more structurally sound build. Step 5. Add reinforcements. Before we remove any walls, you need to make sure that the building is structurally sound. This is where working with an engineer or architect is crucial. You also won't get a building approval unless you have the necessary reinforcements in place. The necessary reinforcements will be totally different from house to house, and also depending on what your council's rules and regulations are. Normally, it will consist of a certain number of steel beams that help to support the structure. Unless you're a structural engineer, you should really seek professional advice in this area. Otherwise, the whole build will be compromised. Step 6. Add a roof. Depending on your plan, a roof may not even be necessary. It can, however, look great on a shipping container home and help the proper runoff from water. This is really helpful if you plan on installing a water tank as part of your design, as your roof can be made to collect the water. It's easiest to add your roof prior to making any cutouts, while everything is still stable and connected. Be careful in designing your roof, and decide whether or not you'd like to add insulation. This can be a great way to add insulation to your container home before the build really gets underway. You'll be able to live comfortably in one section of the home while other parts are still being finished. A simple shed-style roof is the easiest, allowing runoff from rain on both sides of the structure. Installation can be easily fitted, and you can choose to either tile the roof or simply add steel or tin sheeting as the roofing material. Step 7. Cutouts. Now that you have your shell, it's time to cut out the openings for doorways and windows. Consult your plan and mark out where the cuts should be made. You can make these cuts with a cutting torch, a grinder, or a plasma cutter. If you want a clean finish and are worried about charring the remaining walls and flooring, it's best to hire a welder for this job. Also make sure to add holes necessary to fit any plumbing or gas fixtures. Step 8. Add the flooring. Now you need to add whatever flooring you'd like for your container. Some people like to completely remove the existing flooring in the containers, whilst others like to simply cover it up. The choice is yours, and obviously depends on the particular container that you bought and the plans that you are following. A great choice for container homes is floating floorboards. They look like regular floorboards, but they are fitted much more simply, almost like tiles. They're simple to look after and give your container a real homey feel. But obviously, the choice is up to your personal preferences. Step 9. Seal cracks. There will be openings and cracks where the containers join that you have cut doorways. You'll need to seal these up and make sure the joins are clean. One way you can do this would be to weld them together once more. This is best done by a professional welder to ensure a flush finish. A great thing to do at this point is to add foam insulation between the walls where the gaps are. Fill the gaps with foam insulation and either weld the joints shut afterwards or use a foam sealant. Then, you can want to add a backer rod and caulk to create a nice finish. Step 10. Framing. It's now time to add wooden frames to the areas that you've cut. These are the areas where you'll be adding doorways and windows. If you don't have framing experience, it may be best to hire a builder. You will be creating the frames and attaching them to the container. You can attach them through a combination of bolts and screws. Make sure that you use treated screws to ensure that they last and aren't corroded. Step 11. Add doors and windows. Now that you've got all of your framing done, it's now a simple job of adding your doors and windows. Most people can purchase a pre-made door and fit it quite simply. Windows, however, will be quite a different skill. You will probably need to get the glass custom fit to your plan, and this requires a glazier. Then, they will fit the windows for you. Step 12. Interior framing and adding drywall. Now that everything is structurally sound, sealed, and with doors and windows fitted, it's time to finish up the inside of your home. This framing should be quite simple to install, and is basically there to hold the drywall in place. Step 13. Wire your container home. This is now the easiest point to wire your container home. This step does require an electrician. For obvious reasons, do not try and do this yourself unless you're a licensed professional. Add the wiring to all of the areas you need, and it's on to the next step. Step 14. Insulate. You may have already added some insulation between the walls prior to sealing them up, and perhaps added some in your roof. It's a good idea to add additional insulation now to your walls. Then you can finish up by hanging the drywall. You can also choose to insulate the exterior of your container home. It all depends on how you'd like it to look. If the exterior of your home will be covered with some type of cedar or vinyl finish, you can easily insulate beneath this finish. Some people, however, want their container home to look like a container on the outside and display the steel wall of the original container. The choice is yours. Step 15. Finishing touches. Now your container home is pretty much complete. It's time to add the finishing touches. Get the final fittings added, such as toilets, sinks, air conditioners, fans, and light fittings. Once this is done, it's time to add furniture and move in. Congratulations! Cutting out windows and doors. An important step in the process of modifying your containers into an actual home is to cut out openings for your windows and doors. While it may seem as easy as simply measuring, tracing out, and cutting away, it's actually more complex. This is due to the fact that a shipping container is a super strong structure precisely because of all its parts: its sides, roof, back, floor, front doors, frame, purlins, and rails come together to form a completely integrated, whole single structure. When any part of this structure is cut into or cut away, the strength and stability of the container as a whole is greatly affected. This is something many first-time container home builders don't always realize, and their enthusiasm to get started on the doors and windows often leads to a container that has been weakened beyond use and must be reinforced with lots of expensive steel to regain the usefulness it originally had. A very popular look, particularly where lots of natural light is desired, is to remove an entire side of the container's corrugated paneling, replacing it with glass, for an ultra-modern look that provides the benefit of bringing the outdoors in. While I'm a fan of this look myself, I've also seen it fail miserably when home builders have tried to pull it off without realizing a major rule of thumb in container building. Anytime a part of the container's corrugated paneling is removed, you are going to need a strong steel frame out around the opening that is created in order to compensate for the loss of structure and strength. Generally, keep in mind that the weight of any cutout removed from your container must be matched by the weight of support poles and beams. In many cases, the opening size and the roof loads will also dictate that roof support and column support is created. While my work with turning containers into homes also started out as a series of DIY adventures, and I strongly encourage other container home enthusiasts to save money and gain experience by doing as much of the work of turning their containers into homes by themselves as possible, there are stages where professional guidance and/or labor are needed. Cutting into and away from containers definitely falls under this category. So despite the fact that it may seem like an additional expense to hire a professional engineer or builder to plan and carry out the window and door creation process, it will actually save you money and untold heartache down the line. The need to reinforce the container after cutting away is particularly important for larger size window or door openings, and also if you will be creating a container home with a stack design, in which your container roof may bear the load of another container, or you'll be creating rooftop deck or any other structure on top of the container. A professional will examine the container, listen to your requirements, and then create and carry out a plan to give you the doors, windows, skylights, and other architectural features you want while working to reinforce the structure throughout, allowing you to avoid a weak structure or, even worse, an eventual collapse. One great option to consider is to have this stage of your container modifications done by the container seller. The majority of container sellers offer all kinds of modifications to help turn your container into a home, and one of these is to cut out, reinforce, frame out, and prepare your home's windows and doors for you before your container ever arrives. This is not as expensive as it sounds, and a special deal can usually be negotiated, particularly if you are purchasing several containers from them. Alternately, you can hire the services of a local welder for an extremely cost-effective price. Your container can be cut into using a cutting torch, grinder, or plasma cutter. One of the benefits of having a welder do the cutting for you is that they can use a plasma cutter, and this provides you with the very best and most precise cut. And another benefit is that you'll be done with the entire process in 3 to 4 hours, allowing you to move on with the rest of your build as quickly as possible. Installing windows and doors. Once you've had your local welder make clean cutouts of your windows and doors, it's time to fit the frames into them. Take your frame and dry fit it into the cutout opening. Once you have the frame in the opening level and plumb, tack welding can then be used in 4 places to weld the frame. The welds can then be ground smooth, and the joints can be caulked with a urethane windshield adhesive. A red oxide primer can then be applied. Money-saving tip. Brand new double-pane glass windows and frames can be a costly addition to your build. Instead, buy good quality used window panes for a fraction of the price of brand new ones, either from online selling platforms like eBay or directly from building sites where demolitions will be occurring. Use online home builders forums to search for sellers in your area, and you'll be saving money without sacrificing performance and looks. The same goes for doors. Depending on the type of doors and door frames you seek, you can easily find everything from pre-owned sliding glass doors, which are ideal for saving space and letting in light, to traditional and even antique doors online, in a range of sizes and at amazing prices that will take a lot off your finishing costs. Buying a used shipping container. Buying a used shipping container involves a careful process of inspection, cleaning, as well as protecting the container against environmental and moving damage. Not all shipping containers are created equal. Do you know where that shipping container came from? Do you know what it contained? Those are just 2 questions anyone interested in buying a used shipping container should ask before a purchase. Buying a used shipping container. Due to the growing popularity of shipping container homes, it's not that difficult to find a used shipping container. If you happen to live along the coast, you'll find a variety for sale at your local port, harbor, or shipping suppliers. Shipping containers, new and used, can be found online and in traditional newspaper or marketing ads. Cost will differ depending on length of the container, 20 foot as opposed to 40 foot for example, as well as ceiling height, which can range from 9 feet to 10 feet or more. When looking at listings, you'll find them written like this: 40 foot, which specifies its length, and possible the term high cube, which defines the container 9.5 feet in height. You'll also commonly find shipping containers that measure 8 feet high. Some sellers and suppliers offer free delivery if you're planning on setting the container down within a certain radius of the supplier. Warranties may also be available. In many cases, you may find listings for standard ISO containers. ISO is an acronym that defines International Standards Organization and implies precise manufacturing specifications in regard to width, length, and height. ISO standards also apply to the strength and durability of a shipping container, which is why most people looking to convert a shipping container into a home opt for ISO containers. The average cost of a shipping container ranges from $1,500 to $2,500 in the US. If you're good at negotiating, you might be able to talk the seller down to something as low as $500. Tip: before purchasing, determine whether the person/company selling the container actually owns it. Scams are prevalent out there. Stay on your toes. In most circumstances, the owner of the shipping container as well as the container number is painted onto the side. If this is not visible, ask the owner to provide proof of ownership. Don't be afraid or hesitant to question the owner. Have a list of questions ready prior to your visit to view the container. Some questions can include: where did the container come from? How old is it? When did you buy it? Why are you selling it? Quality of the shipping container is also important. Whenever possible, try to determine the type of materials used in the construction of the container, especially the steel. When it comes to converting a shipping container into a home, look for shipping containers that are manufactured from what is called Corten steel is preferred, but other types are out there. However, the Corten steel containers are durable and resistant to rust in a variety of environments. Another construction material used in shipping containers is galvalume. Galvalume is metal sheeting commonly used in roofing scenarios. Galvalume has been around since the early 1970s, a steel coil construction that's been coated with a metal alloy that contains approximately 55% aluminum and roughly 45% zinc. It looks similar to galvanized steel, though with a smoother surface appearance. Galvalume is considered heat-resistant and is a good barrier against corrosion, is resistant to adverse weather and fire. Shipping the shipping container. Before you put the down payment or pay in full for your shipping container, consider the transportation costs that add to the overall outlay for the container. In most cases, the shipping container will have to be transported to your location. Costs involved in such transportation depend on whether you hire someone to transport the container or you do it yourself. Tip: if this is your first buy, it is recommended that you opt for a professional to move your container. In the end, you'll save stress, prevent possible mistakes and/or damage to your container, which will save you money in the long run. Even so, check around for the best pricing. Hiring an outfit to tow or haul the container, depending on distance, can cost as much as $100 plus per hour. However, you'll be in a much better position if you negotiate to pay per mile, not per hour. Having to use a crane to load a shipping container on top of a flatbed truck can cost quite a bit more. Shipping and transportation, as well as maneuvering a container onto the foundation, will also require the shipping container to have the structural strength to facilitate such movement. Before arranging for transportation, determine exact placement, because once the shipping container is set down, it will cost money, time, and effort to move it again. For this reason, having the foundation ready beforehand is your best bet. Tip: for DIY transportation of a shipping container, it's best to rent a flatbed that tilts, offering easier offloading. Another option is to hire a truck with a crane, which will lift the container from the truck bed through the use of chains that can then lower it to the desired location. This is why the shipping container must be in good shape and able to withstand this type of offloading. When buying a used shipping container, or a new one for that matter, know and understand the main structural components of the shipping container. For example, the major structural components include rails, headers, posts, corner posts and corner castings, floor understructure, including cross members, floor planks, floor panels, and floor fastenings, doors, including J-bars and data plates and panels, side, front, and roof. When negotiating with the supplier, ask about cleanliness and safety of the container. Ask for any documentation available to prove that the shipping container has been properly cleaned and decontaminated. Living off of the grid. Electricity. Supplying electricity to a shipping container home isn't a difficult task in most cases. Now that doesn't mean that anyone can do it. In fact, I can't, or rather, I'm not allowed to do it. By law, you will need to hire a professional, unless you are an electrician yourself. Therefore, I can't give you a detailed manual on how you can go about installing electricity. What I can do, however, is to give you a few tips to ensure that your electrician does a great job. Ensure that all wiring is protected by plastic conduit. Ask the electrician if he can weld extra steel stripes for the inside of the home to mount the electrical fittings. Get him to sign all the necessary papers, so your house will be approved by the authorities. Water. Now, regarding water distribution, have you thought about where you will get your water supply if you happen to live off the grid? Perhaps it's possible to have it brought to you, or maybe you can get it from rainwater or a nearby well. For off-the-grid living, composting toilets can be an excellent choice. Some questions that are worth asking yourself are: should I have a septic tank? What will happen with wastewater? Ask your local authorities about permits. Where do I need to drill holes? Shower, bathtub, or both? What do I want? What type of water heater will I use? An electric one or a water heater? Once you've come this far, it can be good to start buying things like a toilet, shower grid, taps, valves, and shower head. By this stage, it's also time to install your air conditioning and heating system. Insulation. The insulation that you need will depend on where you live and what the temperature is. You will need more insulation if you live in a cold climate compared to if you were to live in a warm climate. The most important thing that insulation does, however, is to protect your container against condensation. Now, if you live in a warm climate, your insulation is there to keep your container cool. So as you can see, your particular needs will determine your way of going about insulating. Here are 3 ways of going about insulating your shipping container home. 1. Foam insulation. This is the insulation that I recommend, since it allows you to make a seamless vapor barrier. The seamless vapor barrier will protect your home from corrosion and mold. This insulation can be used for both the inside and outside of your home. Another good thing with this type of insulation is the fact that it's quick to install. The only negative that I can find with it is that it does cost a little bit more than other types of insulation. 2. Blanket insulation. Blanket insulation can be a good choice if you're on a tight budget, as this is the least expensive option of the 3. It's also relatively easy to set up, but it can be a little bit of a challenge to fit the insulation. This insulation will be placed in stud walls. Always use protective clothes, safety glasses, gloves, and a dust mask when you're working with this type of insulation. Note that this insulation is also known as rock wool. 3. Insulation panels. This insulation should be put between the gaps in the stud walling. Make sure you get the right size if you were to use insulation panels. The great thing about this type of insulation is that it is DIY friendly, has good thickness, and is relatively cheap. Furthermore, it is also quicker to work with compared to blanket insulation. You also have some eco-friendly options in regards to insulation for shipping container homes. Cotton insulation, living roof, and wool insulation are 3 eco-friendly insulation types. It's worth noticing that you don't need to use the exact same insulation everywhere if you want to save money, for example. One option is to have rock wool underneath the shipping container, and then have spray foam insulation on the wall and ceiling. Interior design and inspection. Congratulations! You've made it a long way. Now your container is in place with windows, doors, running water, electricity, and proper insulation. At this stage, it's time to start installing the appliances as well as do some work on the internal frame. Begin by adding dividers and installing rooms. Do you want a standard frame for the ceiling? If so, add a plywood on top to get a nice architecture feel. You can add steel bars on the side to slide in the frame quickly. The steel bars should be inserted 1 foot below the container's ceiling. Now it's also time to lay the floor if you want one. After that, contact your county or city inspector and let him approve the home before you add the appliances, such as the water heater, toilet, shower, refrigerator, and stove. The inspector will check the structural integrity, plumbing systems, and wiring to make sure that everything is safe. How to protect your home against the elements. So you've got the container onto your property, and it's securely fastened to its foundation. There is still a lot to be done before it can be habitable. Perhaps the most crucial of which is properly insulating it. A house is meant to shield you from the elements after all, and without insulation, you will basically be living in a tin can. Well, steel can. The way you insulate your new home is intrinsically tied to the climate the house is in. Cold, wet climates demand much more out of the insulation to keep the house warm and condensation-free, while hot and dry climates do not need to be as stoutly protected, and ventilation is more of a requirement. There are several types of insulation to consider, all on a cost-to-effect curve, with varying levels of installation difficulty. Spray foam has proven to be some of the most effective insulating material money can buy. It not only provides a peerless R value, a measure of the ability to resist heat flow, it also prevents corrosion and mold by providing a continuous vapor barrier. In addition, it is the quickest to install, can be applied to the interior and exterior walls, and its consistency allows it to adhere to nearly any surface and fit into gaps of any size. The only real downsides to using foam are the cost, estimated in price per board foot. A single shipping container would cost roughly $850 to insulate, and the mess. Being an aerosol foam, it requires protective gear to apply, and overspray is quite common to have to clean up. Fiberglass insulation is the most common type, and is a more user-friendly and economical option than foam. Available in either blanket or rolled foam, this material requires stud walls before insulation. This type is good for most purposes, but you will need to install some form of vapor barrier, since this does not protect much against condensation. Overall, a good option for warmer climates where not much insulation is necessary. Insulation paneling is another option that is easy to install, with a high R value for its density. This also requires stud walls prior to installation and comes in pre-fitted sections to accommodate the space between your studs. Slightly more expensive than blanket fiberglass, paneling is a good option when you want to keep the thickness of your insulation down while still providing a high R value and don't have the budget for spray foam. Ventilation goes hand in hand with insulation when preparing your shipping container home. A properly ventilated home can be kept cool when needed and defend against condensation that contributes to mold and rust. Simple vents are a common method of passive ventilation implemented in most container homes. Placed up high and at opposite sides of the container, vents provide a cross flow of air through the unit by the power of the wind. For homes that are settled on concrete piers or otherwise raised foundations, it is wise to incorporate vents into the foundation or crawl spaces to prevent condensation buildup and increase heat flow through the floors. This works particularly well in cold environments. Turbine vents, or whirlybird vents, are also very effective at drawing air out of the container and are very affordable for their utility. Average cost of a good quality turbine is about $50. Placed on the roof of the container, these can be installed in minutes and should only require maintenance once every few years. Example of a louvered vent and whirlybird turbines attached to a shipping container. Active mechanical ventilation may be necessary in warmer climates, where the passive systems need to be supplemented to keep the house cool. Many container homes implement extractor fans, an exhaust-only system, to draw warm air and humidity out. These should be placed as high as possible and furthest away from your largest source of air, usually a door or window. In contrast, supply-only ventilation systems actively push air into the unit from the outside. This can be as simple as installing an air conditioning unit on the side of your container. A single standard 12,000 BTU heat/AC unit is sufficient to keep even a 40-foot container nice and cool. An exhaust-only extractor fan and supply-only heat AC unit installed on a container. Installing utilities into your shipping container home is not unlike any other conventional home. Along with the structural layout of the container, plans for the electrical and plumbing layouts should be drawn up before you start working on the house. You should know where you want your appliances and outlets to be placed before you frame out the inside of the container. Have an ideal location for the fuse box and the hookup to the power grid in mind. Mark locations on the stud walls for where the outlets and appliance hookups will be, and attach all electrical boxes to the studs before installing any drywall. Drill holes through the studs where appropriate and thread Romex electrical wiring through these holes to wherever they need to be, trying to be as efficient as possible. Most shipping containers have holes near the base to allow a forklift easy access. These holes can be used to house portions of your circuit if necessary. Chassis for the plumbing should be drilled out of the floors and walls before insulating. The following is an example layout for an electrical plan, as well as an image of roughed-in electrical and plumbing systems. Moving into a container home. You need various kinds of utilities, such as gas, water, and electricity in your home. Installing utilities in a container home is just like installing utilities in any traditional home. You can restrict plumbing in 1, 2, or 3 locations: kitchen, dining room, and bathroom, and minimize the cost. Installing gas in the kitchen is as simple as installing gas in a traditional home. You can even go creative by installing solar panels on the roof and produce your own electricity or have solar water heater. If you do not want to incorporate solar panels or a solar water heater right away, you can always install it later. You need to keep in mind that you can upgrade, so you need to make it easy to attach to your current system. If you do not have a civic water supply in your location, you can install water tanks and begin harvesting rainwater. Legal protection. Just like with traditional home building, shipping container homes also require a building permit. However, if you happen to be located outside the zoning area, you may not need to follow building codes. You should always stay safe by checking the building codes in your area. Building codes are different in different areas. You also need insurance for your container home. Since container homes are earthquake and hurricane proof, getting insurance will not be that difficult. Interior designs. In this chapter, you can get some inspiration of other designs. You can check online to see how a finished container looks like. You may not even recognize it as a shipping container when exterior finishes are done. Other questions you might face is, are container homes tall enough to comply with the building codes? The general requirement of a home is 8 feet tall. This is the standard height of a residential home. The shipping containers have 8.6 feet height. You even have a better option to make your home taller by getting HC containers, which are about 12 feet tall. Critical mistakes to avoid. Cargo architecture is on the rise. People are building residential homes, office buildings, local businesses, shopping malls, schools, community buildings, and many other building structures from shipping containers. Since containers are strong and easy to customize, They are well suited for any kind of structures. However, things are not so simple. Building with shipping containers still has many challenges. One of the major problems associated with building the shipping containers in the absence of experts is the idea is still new. If you are serious about building shipping containers, here are some crucial mistakes you should avoid. Whether you are buying a used container or one-trip container, make sure to check the containers you are buying. Used containers are cheap, and they still have decades of life left. However, consider investing in a one-trip container. You will never repent of extra investment. For hassle-free building and any legal complications that you might have later, check the building permits in your area. If you do not have experience, you probably need a contractor. While looking for a contractor, try to find a contractor that can give you a finished home, instead of hiring multiple contractors for the building and interior designing. Generally, shipping containers are 8.6 feet tall. However, you can find 12 feet tall containers. It's better to get a high cube container, especially if you live in colder climates. Insulation. You should understand the shipping container's structure beforehand, so that you do not come across problems during the customization of the containers. Building with containers saves you money, but don't expect to make huge savings. You need to cut and weld while modifying the containers. It is time-consuming. Learn how to minimize the required welding. Containers need to be insulated before you can move in. Find out various insulation methods and always use the method that is durable and cost-effective for your climate. Consider what kind of utilities are must. Plan plumbing, electrical wiring beforehand. Use personal protection when you are working. Use gloves, hearing protection, a hard hat, and safety glasses. Is a shipping container home for you? So you are planning a shipping container home. Is shipping container home for you? Here are some myths and facts associated with shipping container homes. Some of the obvious benefits of using containers to build homes are saving money, saving time, and strong and durable home. However, building homes from containers pose many questions and concerns from the potential container home builders. You might be one of those who wants to build a shipping container home, but confused about whether it is right for you or not. One of the questions that might be bothering you could be, how could I build my dream home within the seemingly obvious limitations of using metal containers? Here are some myths and facts that will clear the misconceptions about container homes. A lot of people are attracted to shipping container homes because you can save a lot of money on construction material. Since the basic structure is already present, you don't need walls, floors, even roofs to build. This saves at least 30% in construction cost, depending on what container you get. Using containers as building materials also saves money on weatherproofing and exterior cladding. When you are using containers, your per square cost will also substantially reduce. Apart from building cost, you can also save building time. The basic structure is already present, and all you have to do is some modifications to walls, windows, doors, and insulation. Construction time can be cut down. But there is a flip side. Building a shipping container home saves time and money might be a one-sided view. You can, of course, get a shipping container for $1,500 to $3,500. However, you need at least 3 containers to make a proper home for your family of 4. Shipping the huge metal boxes to your location adds to your construction cost. A lot of cutting and welding is required, which also makes building costly. Many people are attracted towards container homes because they consider it easy building, which happens to be one of the myths of shipping container homes. If you do not have any prior experience, you might need a contractor. Hiring a contractor to build your shipping home can cost as much as building a traditional home. You might need a contractor to finish the build and another to do the interior. Following regulations can also be a headache. Every state/country has its own set of rules and standards, which means a container house in the US does not look like a container house in the UK. Since containers are steel boxes designed to stand harsh sea weather, container homes are strong and durable. They are considered 10 times stronger than the traditional homes in times of earthquakes and hurricanes. For a green and sustainable living, container homes are better solutions. According to a rough estimate, there are around 24 million unused shipping containers on Earth. Generally, containers are retired after only 10 to 15 years of use. However, they can last more than that, even for decades. Reusing these containers means you are saving resources. Other things to consider. The land should not be soggy when the truck comes to deliver the container. Is it possible to connect the container home to the grid, electricity, water, and sewage? If you want internet, are you able to stay with your current provider? How would you manage garbage? Is there a garbage truck passing your property? Myths and facts about container homes. It is certain that building with shipping containers can save you big money. By using containers, the costs associated with things like weatherproofing, structure, and cladding of exterior can be avoided. There are some who proclaim that there can be cost savings of up to 40%, while others vehemently deny this claim. The naysayers are often those who go to the max on every little thing throughout the process, so that when they are done, there is no hint of a shipping container left anywhere. Beyond the actual financial savings, by using containers, you will be saving precious time, and when you are building a home, time equals money. For example, one particular home that used 8 of the 40-foot shipping containers had construction time reduced by 20%, according to the builders. With all of this said, shipping container homes are not always the cheapest way to go. It all depends on what you put into your home, what finishes you use, what flooring you want, how you finish your walls, etc. Some folks want to add as many extras as possible when they are building their container homes, while others want to be as eco-friendly as possible and use all sustainable or recycled materials in their construction. Some might think that it is easy to build with shipping containers. Just read a book and everything is done. Unfortunately, it is not quite that simple. Although this book will help you along the way, it will not help you go it alone. You will notice that many of the tips in this book advise you to make use of professional help, especially if those professionals have worked with shipping containers for home building before. Your best approach is not to do it alone, but to get professional help for architectural drawing services and structural engineering. Make sure you find someone that understands container finishing, as this will impact your price and the final quality of your home. Some prior container builders/owners wish that they would have hired only one contractor to help them with the entire process, versus one for modifying the containers and then another one to finish out the inside. Involving only one contractor helps ensure a seamless finished product. It is also a good idea to hire a professional if you are not extremely familiar with both building and shipping containers and local building codes, as building regulations often end up being a massive headache for container home builders. A professional will ensure that the job is done quickly and without hassle from any local officials due to failure to meet regulations. Most people automatically assume that all shipping container homes are tiny. This cannot be further from the truth. In some cases, container homes can be small if you want, but it is also easy to make large, sprawling homes, all depending on how many shipping containers you use in building your home. And yes, shipping container homes are durable and sturdy. There is certainly no doubt when it comes to the strength of these homes. In fact, most people would agree that this is the best feature of container homes. The container home is stronger than concrete, wood, and regular steel buildings. They can stand up to 100-mile-per-hour winds when they have been correctly rooted in the foundation, or 175-mile-per-hour winds when they are anchored with pylons. Even if they receive a direct hit during an earthquake, the structure would never collapse. It would be like a safe cocoon during an earthquake, at least many times safer and stronger than a traditional housing structure. It is possible to get a bad deal when purchasing a used shipping container. When you get ready to start on your shipping container home, unless you have extensive knowledge with buying containers, it is not wise to purchase a shipping container without first seeing it. If you do, they may pawn off a container that is in terrible condition while charging the price for a like-new container. It is best to see the container in person before final payment. Splurging on a one-trip container is most likely the best option and is often worth it. It will speed up construction time because you will not need to refurbish the container, and it will probably result in a more polished home. Be aware of what sizes of containers are out there. Most people are only aware of the containers that are 8 feet tall and 20 feet long at most, but some are as tall as 10 feet and some are as long as 53 feet. Understand that the shipping container structure means that the 2 long walls are load-bearing walls. It means that if a hole is cut in these walls, they need to be braced to avoid compromising their structural integrity. If you want to save money, make sure to limit welding as much as possible. It is usually quite costly and adds up quickly. The future for shipping container homes. As the use of intermodal shipping containers for various architectural purposes continue to gain popularity, there are plenty of things that people can look forward to when it comes to the future of shipping container homes. Many predict that more people will opt for this type of housing for its sustainability and cost-effectiveness, while others do so for the unique aesthetic benefit that cargo unit homes provide. In terms of commercial exposure, a number of pop-up container malls have been seen around the world, from Europe to South Africa, and similar structures, now of a more permanent nature, are underway across Asia and the United States. Box Park, the London-based pop-up shopping complex, is the first of its kind. It was made entirely out of shipping containers and influenced the trend of shipping container malls across the European nations and United States. In 2011, Box Park officially opened in London, although it was for a limited time only. Box Park is the pop-up retail complex made entirely out of shipping container units, each one designed to cater to a particular brand. It is said to be the first of its kind and was built on a temporary location. All shipping containers used for this shopping complex were recycled. Box Park revolutionized the retail industry in Europe, as it offered real estate developers and businesses alike with an alternative to the old concept of malls, which most people are slowly outgrowing. Not only are they changing shoppers' attitudes, but the concept has given attention to the need to go back to horizontal commerce, providing retail products and services at eye level. Box Park was strategically located along East London's high-fashion Shoreditch High Street by a vacant lot in the area. Box Park was created by using 60 recycled steel shipping containers, all of which are of the 20-foot standard size. The shipping containers were arranged to form 5 rows and were stacked to only have 2 levels. It took Box Park's creators a year to finish construction for the pop-up project. The man behind it is a well-known British businessman by the name of Roger Wade. Wade is the entrepreneur that established the Box Fresh fashion label that earned him his fortune back in the 90s. When he created the Box Fresh brand, he sold his wares in any market he could find. As he spent time in these stalls, he focused on international shipping, starting with Hong Kong. He has always had this fascination with shipping containers and loved the idea that it could be used for more than just a transport container. By setting up Box Park, Wade was able to achieve something that was closely associated to his dreams of international commerce right in his hometown. Box Park was a temporary retail complex, but was given an initial lease of 5 years, enough time for the developers and retailers to prepare the next shipping container pop-up. Aside from satisfying the demand for rebirthed horizontal shopping experience, the concept allowed for an environmentally friendly, not to mention sustainable structure. There were more benefits to it than just a different kind of shopping experience. It is this sustainability and reduced carbon footprint that heightened its appeal and continued to encourage support from patrons around the world. The same concept was brought to South Africa, and smaller varieties have been seen in different parts of the globe, most of the time built by specific brands for special events or product launches. A popular brand that continually makes use of the shipping container retail pop-up is Doc Martens. Part of the structure's sustainability, aside from its use of recycled shipping containers, is the fact that it holds no special form of insulation or internal components. Its insulating technology is fairly simple, with everything from the utilities to the electrical aspects powered by a series of solar panels. It is not only the first of its kind when it comes to revolutionary complex structure, but is also the first of its kind when it comes to energy efficiency in a commercial environment. Box Park reduces carbon emissions from its daily operations and also lessened internal or embodied carbon emissions as it was built with recycled materials. There was no need to expel energy to manufacture the materials needed for it to come to fruition. The architectural concept that started with modular shipping container homes are now being adopted into more complex forms of urban housing. There is a popular game where the player stacks housing blocks with the goal of achieving as high of a stack as possible without the building collapsing. This is being brought to life by a team of architects and engineers from Europe. The concept is for stackable and movable apartments. Prefabricated shipping container homes, fully furnished and ready for occupancy, are stacked atop one another via a heavy load crane. The common terminology for this residential complex is the pop-up apartment. Basically, the concept is a cluster of prefabricated tiny homes, and they have been named Y-cubes. Each Y-cube can be stacked atop the other. So far, its creators are planning on achieving 10 stories per complex. They are intending on building prefab homes strong enough to handle 20 or 30 stacks without having to apply additional support beams on the lower tiers. Apart from being able to stack these studio apartments, the design is also meant to allow the developers to dismantle the homes when necessary. Dismantling means removing a stack or two and repositioning them in other locations or other building complexes. Each unit has a bedroom, living area, kitchen, and bathroom, all fitted into 280 square feet of open space. The open-plan living area allows for a maximized use of space. The beauty of the Y-cube is that each one comes with its very own deck area. The appearance is pretty simple, but basic aesthetics works best when it comes to this apartment complex. The streamlined look allows for a more spacious external look. Each Y-cube is built in a different location, a factory, where everything from the gas lines, plumbing, and electric connections is pre-made into each unit. When it is delivered to its final location by truck and crane, the homeowner simply has to plug it into a preset grid, and the unit will be all powered up and ready for occupancy. Because of the stackable prefab design, it is easy to add more units to a complex. Each container unit is reinforced with cement and wood to allow each tier to withstand the weight. The brains behind this project are architects Roger Sturkharber and partners. Each unit costs $75,000 to make, and this is extremely cheap compared to how much a typical apartment and condominium units go for. Aside from the lower overall cost, these units can also be made at a much faster rate. Initially, the project was meant to provide homes for the increasing homeless population of London, where rent is somewhat expensive. The first release consisted of 36 units. It was offered for less than half of the average rent charged in the city. Aside from this, payments were staggered, enabling homeless renters to comply with the monthly payments. All 36 units only took less than half a year to complete. The complex comes with an outer shared yard and playground. The layout for these movable apartments feature a studio setup. Because of the immense success of the Y-Cube project, various developers abroad are considering implementing the concept, building more units, and positioning them across Europe. Other developers are also considering using the Y-Cube concept to create middle and high-range residential options for urbanites. The Y-Cubes are meant to offer housing to the needy for a 5-year period, while the latter is meant to offer permanent housing for sale that can be moved from location to location when needed. It gives a completely new definition to relocation. What once was a time when homeowners need to leave their abode in search of greener pastures or a better backyard now involves a simple appointment with a crane and shipping company. With the urban cubes, homeowners can move their entire residence to any city of their choosing with ease. To make this possible, developers are planning on having cube complexes around the world. If a homeowner needs to move, for as long as a slot is available, their shipping container home can be squeezed into the slot, and voila! As the popularity of shipping containers used for residential and commercial space provisions continue, the architectural community expects the creation of a series of creative buildings inspired by the imagination. With the continued use of recycled shipping containers comes the hope of development and improvement of building materials that are sustainable in nature. The future sees more of these things being readily available across global markets at prices that are more affordable. Conclusion. I hope you have learned a few things about shipping container homes. When going forward, make sure to have a dream, and then do not allow it to be compromised. If you find people with the right experience to help you, and you do plenty of research before getting those containers down in your plot of land, there is no reason you cannot soon be living in a shipping container home. If you are put off by some of the work involved, or work required, in turning a container into something more, then you might need to consider whether building your own home is actually the path for you, and think if you really want this. There are many fantastic homes already built that are free for you to discover. Having one with your own character is not always necessary, and trying to rush the process or doing it too cheaply is never the solution. Perhaps you have seen the advantages of a shipping container, and you might now wish to build a smaller building or retreat with one rather than a permanent day-to-day. Whatever the case, make sure to keep your feet on the ground and listen to experts whenever possible to stay true to your vision. This has been Shipping Container Homes, All You Need to Know, the complete guide to real estate with strategies and useful tips. Written by Grover Nicholls. Narrated by Chris Lynch. Copyright 2019 by Grover Nicholls. Production copyright by Grover Nicholls.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.